Chapter 5. The Betrayal. A frantic knocking roused a sleeping Naruto. "Hey Naruto, get up." Huh? What was Shikamaru doing at his apartment? Rolling out of the couch, which was his temporary bed, he sleepily stumbled to his door. Upon opening it, Shikamaru almost tumbled into his apartment before he started at Naruto's hair. Troublesome. Naruto grinned sleepily. "Sorry Shika, long story. I'll tell you another time." Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. "I don't want to know, you troublesome person," he grumbled. "Anyway, get ready, mission, 1 hour, North Gate." Naruto simply stared at him confusedly. "What do you mean? I'm on training leave." Shikamaru palmed his face, exasperated. "Troublesome. Sasuke left the village yesterday." "What?" "And apparently the village is still shorthanded after the invasion, so Tsunade-sama told me to pick a team to go after them and to take you." At that, Naruto's mind began to work, shrugging off the last remnants of sleep. Why had Bachan told Shikamaru to specifically get him? After a moment, he got his answer. Ghost Lady. Seeing as she couldn't spare any higher class shinobi, it was obvious she wanted another safety net for the mission. All right, I'll be there. Who are the others in the team? Shikamaru shrugged. "Well, I was thinking of Chaoji and Kiba and maybe Hinata or Neji. What about Bushy Brow? Lee? He's still in the hospital." Naruto thought about the group. "Take the bun girl, I think her name is Tenten. We're going to need a sniper, all of us are close range other than you," he said finally. Shikamaru nodded absently. "I'll ask Neji to tell her." "Come with me to ask the others?" Naruto shook his head. "No, I've got some things to figure out. Meet you at the gate." He turned to go back inside. Shikamaru sighed. "Troublesome." Turning back with a lazy wave, "And Naruto, do something to your hair. I don't want everyone gaping at it during the mission." "You just don't want the chatter, you lazy bum." Naruto replied. "Troublesome." As soon as Shikamaru had left, Naruto was cursing up a storm in the kitchen until he was interrupted by a sleepy female voice. "Naruto-kun, shut up before I kill you." Naruto yelled back. "Ghost Lady, get up. Bachan needs you." A sleepy mumble answered him, and Naruto's sweat dropped. Who knew that the courtly Mito-sama was emphatically not an early riser? Repeated tries yielding only various versions of go away and assorted death threats, Naruto finally, in sheer desperation, did the one thing that would wake up any shinobi. "Ghost Lady." Code Red. There was a muted expletive from her room before a series of thuds were heard. Finally, a disgruntled Mito opened the door and stepped out cautiously, one hand on her hair buns, grabbing a senbon she had used to pin up her hair. The door, Naruto realized with a shiver, was totally covered in senbon to the point it looked like a hedgehog. Seriously, how many senbon did she hide in her hair? Mito was growling in irritation as she analyzed the situation and found no imminent threat. With an incensed look on her face, she stalked towards a cringing Naruto, jabbing a finger to his chest. "You never do that for a prank." Naruto waved his hands frantically, trying to pacify her. Sorry, but it really was an emergency and you were not waking up, and if you make me late Bachan's going to kill me, and Shika's going to suspect, and we're going to be late, Dadabeo." By now Mito was completely confused. "Slow down, Naruto-kun. What's happened, and for what would we be late?" Naruto scowled. "The Tenma left the village last night, and Bachan told Shika to get me. I think she wants to be available as backup, apparently no other Chunin or Jonin could be spared." Mito scoffed. "Uchiha. All of that blasted clan think they're God's own gift to the world. And now, what with that massacre you told me about, I think the total number of Uchiha in the village is 0? Yup. That's why the village is in such a tiffy, apparently the last Uchiha is too valuable to go missing." He scoffed bitterly. "Personally speaking, if the bastard was stupid enough to abandon Konoha for the guy who killed the old man, he deserves a slow death." Mito laid a calming hand on his shoulder. "Why would you think it's Orochimaru he's run off to? Where else would he go? The snake freak pretty much gave him an invitation at the Forest of Death, and he knows he's too weak to kill his brother right now, what with Itachi putting him to a coma the last time they met." Feeling the emotions flowing off the young redhead, Mito awkwardly asked, "Naruto-kun, what are you going to do when you find him?" Naruto's scowl deepened. "I'm going to give him exactly one chance to surrender before I deal with him as any deserter would be. Execution." The finality in his tone shocked Mito before she realized the true cause for Naruto's bitterness. Seeing the whole village praise the young Uchiha while shunning him must have been harder for him than even he realized. It was just not a case of loyalty or even revenge with Naruto anymore, though those factors undoubtedly contributed. No, this had a streak of jealousy, of possessiveness, all over it. Having yearned for what Sasuke had effortlessly got had left Naruto incapable of calmly dealing with the fact that Sasuke had spurned it. Mito turned to prepare for the morning. I'm going to meet with Tsutsu before the mission, and just to be clear, I won't interfere unless anyone's in mortal danger. In battle, my chakra use could interfere with your chakra unfavorably. Naruto, who was searching for his kunai pouch, nodded absently. Sure, see you at the gate, ghost lady. And when we get there, communicate with the Uzushio hand signs I taught you yesterday. We don't want your classmates to know of me unless it's absolutely necessary. At the north gate, a curious group of genin was gathering. Kiba was glaring at Neji, together with Akamaru who was growling. Tenten was polishing a kunai, and Chaoji was calmly eating chips. Shikamaru had his head in his hands. A short distance away, invisible to the group, Mito was calmly perched on a nearby branch, watching the group of genin. That troublesome Naruto. If we get late then Sanada-sama is going to punish me. Yeah. What's the deal? We don't need that guy. Kiba interrupted. Shooting a glare at Neji, who continued to ignore him, he added, and on top of that, Shikamaru, why do we need this jerk? Hinata would have been much better. Akamaru barked in agreement. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome. Hinata is still not cleared for strenuous missions by Tsunade-sama, and Neji here has the strongest Byakugan in all the genin of the clan. He cracked a small grin. Besides, Naruto recommended both Neji and Tenten. Tenten had been distracted from polishing the kunai by Shikamaru's remark. That blonde orange midget? Kiba snickered at her description. I've never even met the guy. Why would he recommend me? Cause your shuriken jutsu is awesome, Dadabeo. A loud voice behind them caused all of them to turn around to face the figure coming up the road towards them, even as Tenten blushed at the comment. As the figure came closer, several pairs of eyes widened in disbelief. Annoying verbal tick? Check. Glaring orange jumpsuit? Check. Whisker markings? Check. Blonde hair? Che. With a moan, Shikamaru face-palmed. Troublesome. Naruto, I told you to cover your head. Naruto just grinned. And not see your faces? No thanks. Neji chose that particular moment to enter the conversation. Naruto-san, he asked in a monotone, why is your hair dyed red? Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly, taking the chance to do a few obscure hand signs behind his head. He was immediately tapped thrice on the shoulder. From Shikamaru's narrowed eyes, Naruto thought he probably didn't miss it. So much for obscurity. It's a long story, Dadabeo. Kiba snorted. Knowing you, you probably fell into a vat of paint, dobe, he said dismissively. Naruto reared up at the insult. You want to go, dog boy? Shikamaru got up. Everybody shut up. The group all went silent, even the gate guards were looking at them interestedly. After all, it wasn't often that you saw that most lazy species, the male Nara, raise their voice. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome. Looking at the group, he mentally decided the formation. All right, this mission is to retrieve Sasuke from what is speculated to be Shinobi of Sound. From what is known, he went willingly. The group's reactions were varied at this particular revelation, Shikamaru noticed. The most expressive were Kiba's, whose cursing and the growls of Akamaru let everyone know exactly what they thought. The ones least fazed were Neji, and to Shikamaru's surprise, Naruto, who simply gritted his teeth. So it seems he isn't surprised that Sasuke went to Sound, but I never told him that, he thought. Interesting. We will set off towards the northern borders with Rice Country, where Hidden Sound is rumored to be. Kiba looked up. You and Akamaru take point. You are going too on the lookout for any scent trails of either Sasuke or the Sound Shinobi. I assume you know the terrain? Kiba puffed up his chest. Piece of cake. My mum used to take us tracking in these woods. I know them like the back of my hand. Akamaru? A series of barks answered him. Shikamaru continued, ignoring Kiba's exuberance. I will be immediately behind Kiba because I'm the team leader and I will take the front. Tenten-san will be immediately behind me because she is the sniper. Any objections? Everybody shook their heads. Naruto will cover the left and he will stay to the left of the main formation, near the center. In case of an attack, you will distract the enemy using your Kage Bunshin. Naruto looked at him, uncomprehending. But before Shikamaru could elaborate, Naruto straightened up. Got it. Stay to the left between you and Tenten-chan. Why didn't you just say so? Shikamaru narrowed his eyes in suspicion before he let out a long suffering sigh. Troublesome, he muttered under his breath, not taking his eyes off Naruto. Something strange was going on, and though this was his first time leading, he already knew that he didn't like it when his team had secrets. Right, he drawled before looking at Chaoji. Chaoji, you take the same position as Naruto, but to the right. You will be the finisher of the team, you only engage when there is a clear target. Chaoji simply nodded, still munching a chip. Shikamaru turned to Neji. Neji-san, you are our rear guard. You take position behind Tenten-san, and I need you to do a full Byakugan scan over the area every 5 minutes. If that is possible? He asked Neji. Neji nodded somewhat indignantly, as if Shikamaru had called his expertise into question. Shikamaru took a deep breath. All right then, let's move out. Just as they were about to take to the trees, a yell came from behind them. Wait. What? Shikamaru whined as they were delayed again. The person turned out to be a teary Sakura, followed by a clearly reluctant Ino, which gave Shikamaru the beginnings of a headache. It only worsened when Sakura spotted Naruto. Instantly changing her demeanor, she marched up to him, a fisted hand reared back to punch him. Naruto, how dare you show your face, Sasuke left because of you, you dope. The team was staring at Sakura, unsure as to what they should do. Naruto, Shikamaru noticed, had gone very still. Sakura seemingly saw it as well, for she froze in her attempt to punch Naruto. A faint pulse of killing intent issued from Naruto, blanketing the surrounding as he tilted his head, studying Sakura intently. Bluish wisps of chakra were emanating from his body, and Shikamaru's attention was drawn to the faint reddish tint it had taken until he saw Naruto's face. Naruto's face was drawn to an expression that Shikamaru would have sworn a month ago would never be present on Naruto's face, especially towards Sakura, his presumed crush. The malicious smirk on his face, combined with the red hair, Shikamaru had never before noticed just how much like fresh blood it looked, dripping down his face in a lanky curtain. It gave Naruto a chilling resemblance to a homicidal Gaara. Why Sakura, do you think your boyfriend running away had anything to do with me? He took a step towards Sakura, and she instinctively stepped back. Shikamaru's hands were halfway into the sign for Kajime no Jutsu before he remembered himself. Surely it would not come to blows? Naruto's face twisted in amusement, though his lengthening fingernails gave light to his expression. Though it is possible that he only stayed in Konoha because he wanted to be with me. How wonderful, I had a fangirl and didn't even know it. Don't you think it's a pity, Shikamaru? Naruto, he said warningly, ready to step in. Naruto gave him a dismissive glance. Cool down, Shika. This is just a little union between ex-teammates, isn't it, Sakura-chan? Sakura swallowed. Naruto's smirk widened to the extent that it looked to the canines glinting. Now, Sakura. No need to act so scared, I'm sure you weren't going to hit me now, were you? Good, you can learn after all. What a surprise. Now as for your little boyfriend, he left the village, and unless he has a very good excuse, he is a traitor to the village. And do you know Konoha's policy towards traitors, Sakura? Of course you do, what with that huge brain of yours, don't you? If he resists capture, and if I know Sasuke he will be killed. I'll probably do it myself, he wouldn't be the first traitor I've dealt with. After Mizuki-sensei, Sasuke won't be a problem. Ignoring the other's gasps, Naruto leaned into Sakura's horrified face, eyes tinged with red. So if you want to see your dear Sasuke come alive again, my dear Sakura-chan, you're better pray your pretty little head off that he listens to reason. He turned his back to Sakura, who was now shaking. Personally, I doubt it. With his last statement hanging around the gathered shinobi like a death knell, he leapt towards the tree line and out of the gate. You guys coming? With a sigh and an apologetic look towards Ino, Shikamaru gave the signal, and the Sasuke retrieval team leapt towards the trees, leaving a shocked Ino and a terrified Sakura standing in the middle of the road. Half an hour into the sprint, Kiba had found the trails of Sasuke and the Sound Shinobi, right up until the scent of Sasuke had disappeared. Figuring Sasuke was simply being carried by the Sound Shinobi, though he did not know the reason, Shikamaru had ordered the team to trail the scent of the Sound Shinobi. They had met a team of wounded patrolling Jonin along the way, Raito and Genma if Shikamaru's memory served, and both had met and been defeated by the Sound. According to their report, the group had consisted of 4 Sound Jonin, who had all shifted to what they had described as a monster form. One had carried a barrel of sorts that they said was covered in seals, which Shikamaru guessed was where they kept Sasuke. However, a reason for doing so eluded him. Shikamaru sighed, he really hated this sort of situations where critical information was missing. Of course, this was not the only thing bothering him. His team was uneasy. Even Kiba, who was notorious for being chatty during missions, was keeping quiet, only speaking when necessary, and casting wary glances at a still fuming Naruto. Unease was hanging around the team like a blanket, and Naruto's continuing ill temper was beginning to wear upon them. Shikamaru had to admit that the scene at the North Gate had intimidated even him a little. Naruto had always been that somewhat stupid, clumsy show-off that no one took seriously. Never had he seen Naruto so intimidating. At the gate Naruto had looked almost feral. Maru-san. Shikamaru-san. Shikamaru looked at Neji, who had been the one who had called. Yes, Neji-san? Neji had his Byakugan active. 4 targets directly ahead, carrying a sealed barrel that the Byakugan cannot penetrate. 500 meters, targets appear to be resting. Everyone stop. At Shikamaru's command, everyone dropped out of the trees to the forest below. What is it, Shika? Naruto's voice was terse. Shikamaru merely pointed the ground about a foot in front of Kiba, where a thin ninja wire-like substance was just visible in the sunlight. Kiba winced. Traps? There's even more in the branches, it's a complete web up there. Tenten looked at Neji. Can't your eyes see them? Neji grimaced. Probably if I was doing a 128 palms. Otherwise they're too thin. In the Hyuga clan, probably only Hiashi-sama and the elders have Byakugan that are strong enough to see this normally. Shikamaru considered their options. From the complexity of the webbing, it was highly unlikely that he could get the whole team through without snagging at least one wire, which would render a sneak attack useless. On the contrary, barreling through would only lead them to an ambush. The only possible option was, say Naruto. Exactly how many clones can you make? For the first time since the incident, Naruto grinned. Shikamaru suddenly felt a vague sense of doom. Exactly how impossible was Naruto going to be this time? The Sound Four were resting from the battle with the Jonin and their release of the curse seals. In the middle of their circle was the barrel containing Sasuke. It was slightly smoking. Hey, fatty. How much longer till the Uchiha is ready? Jirabu, the one who was addressed, looked at the speaker and sighed. Tayuya, a girl shouldn't talk that way. Tayuya tossed her pink hair over her shoulder in irritation. And what are you going to do about it, Fatus? Jirabu simply sighed when the third member of their group suddenly sat up. What's up, Kitamaru? Jirabu asked, before noticing that Kitamaru was smirking. Ah, the Konoha trash is smarter than I thought. He observed with an excited gleam in his eyes. This is going to be an exciting game. Suddenly the clearing was disturbed as the fourth member of the team dropped down into the clearing. Saken was quite obviously disturbed. We've got to go, now. We're being surrounded. Tayuya smirked. Why, you afraid of clones? Konoha doesn't have enough manpower to surround us, Birdbrain. Kitamaru interrupted, looking quite excited. They're all disturbing my web, they're all solid clones. I want to fight that one. He continued, we can't even tell where the real ones are. This is going to be a good game. Saken sighed. We're not here to fight trash, Kitamaru. Remember, Orochimaru-sama needs us as soon as possible. I'm getting hungry, I could stay behind? Jirabu suggested. Suddenly, the one still head poking out of the neck of Saken spoke. Listen to my little brother here, we've got to go now. A feral shout interrupted them. It's too late for that, sound bastards. From all sides of the clearing, an avalanche of Naruto descended, intent on burying the Sound Four under a mountain of clones. In an instant, Kitamaru had held his 6 hands above him, while Jirabu had lifted the barrel and Tayuya and Saken had shifted into defensive positions beside Jirabu. Spider bind. A whitish web of spider webbing issued from Kitamaru's hands, repelling the incoming clones. Moments later all the clones disappeared in puffs of smoke, obscuring the area in chakra smoke. A quiet voice rang out in the confusion. Kajime no Jutsu, complete. Instantly, the Sound Four found themselves stuck in place, unable to move. Gatsuuga. With a yell, Kiba and Akamaru launched themselves at the barrel in Jirabu's hands. Meanwhile, in the opposite end of the battle, Naruto was hiding in the bushes. Ghost Lady, do you really think this is a good idea? Mito nodded somberly. You've been more emotional lately, haven't you? Naruto nodded, puzzled. What does that have to do with this? Your seal's adjusting to your body's changes, so it's going to a bit unstable for some time. That's why I told you to remove yourself from the direct line of sight, you know. If anything even grazes you, it gives the fox an opening to push its own chakra into your body, and we don't need to stress your body on top of everything else. Seeing Naruto's mutinous face, she continued hastily. Look Naruto-kun, the Nara told you to distract the enemy, you know, and in that position you don't need to be in the formation, in fact, it would be detrimental to do so. Naruto nodded, deflated. It still feels like hiding, he grumbled, absently creating another batch of clones to run interference. Think of it this way. If they run into trouble, they have a trump card even they don't know about. Kitamaru hastily used his spider sticky gold ability to form Tonfa, which he used to deflect a hail of kunai coming at him from the bun-haired girl. It had only taken them pulsing the first stage of their curse seals to break free of the spiky-haired boy's jutsu, after which the fight had turned into a free-for-all. Looking around, he saw Jirabu playing around with the Inuzuka and his dog, still carrying the barrel. Taiuya was simply using taijutsu, bobbing and weaving around the shadow user and the fat boy, while Saken was being attacked by the Hyuga. Numerous copies of the blonde boy were flitting around the battles, mostly providing distractions for the Konoha team. None of them were any real threat, however they were numerous and rather slippery, making them a pain to fight unless they went all out. Looking at the others, he saw that all of them had reached the same conclusion, even Taiuya, who would have normally opposed the decision, what with her inability to accept defeat. They couldn't activate their curse seals now, or they would be in no shape to deliver the Uchiha to Orochimaru. This left only one alternative. Nodding to Taiuya, he ducked beneath a flying mace and dispelled a clone with a punch before firing off a jutsu. Spider sticking spit. The tough ropey net catching Tenten by surprise, she hardly had time to do more than cross her arms in front of her before she was brutally pulled from her tree perch and into an off-guard Neji. At the same time Taiuya had caught both Shikamaru and Chaoji by their wrists, proceeding to sling them both into the already unbalanced group in front of them. Hey Fatis, now. With a grunt of exertion, Jirabu caught the incoming Gatsuga in his palms before grounding them. While Kiba and the others were just shaking off their shock, he slammed his palms to the ground. Doten. Doro Domu. With a crumbling sound, curved earth walls grew around the group, trapping the group in a giant dome of stone and earth. Jirabu grinned, throwing the barrel to Kitamaru with one hand, the other on the dome. Chakra glowed in the space between his hand and the earth dome. You go on. I'm hungry, I'll just drain some chakra from this trash before joining up. Kitamaru gave him a questioning look. Are you sure? One rat escaped, after all. Jirabu shrugged, uninterested. If that Konoha trash is stupid enough to show his face, I'll kill him too. Or better yet, eat his chakra, he seems to have a lot. Naruto watched, unsettled, as the Sound 4 easily routed the Konoha team's strategy with brute strength. But that was not the worst. Naruto, that dome is sucking chakra out of its prisoners. Naruto racked his brains for a solution. On one hand, staying meant that he would let the Sound 4 out of sight, which he was loath to do. On the other, he wasn't sure that the others had enough brute force to overpower the dome. Right, Ghost Lady, you track down the other Sound Shinobi and leave a trail for me to follow, I'll take this glutton out. Mito turned to him, surprised. But Naruto-kun. Naruto just gave her a look before stepping out of his hiding place. The first notice Jirabu had of his new opponent was a speeding golden chain rushing towards his hands. Upon his hasty retreat however, the chains abruptly changed direction and headed for the Earth Dome, shattering it like glass to reveal his bewildered teammates. Nobody even flinched when the clone that had been pretending to be him dispelled in a burst of smoke, being preoccupied with staring at Naruto. Oi, Shika. Take the others and go, I'll get back to you. Naruto shouted, ignoring the gawping of the Konoha team. Jirabu slowly flexed his arms, the first stage of the curse seal rippling across his skin. You aren't going anywhere, Konoha trash. Two more chakra chains rippled out of Naruto's arms in reply. Without taking his eyes off of Jirabu, he spoke, Shika, go now before the fight begins. I can handle myself. With a yell, Jirabu lifted up a piece of the very earth's surface above his head, looking like a drawing of Atlas. Doten. Dario Dango. He bit out through his exertion, levering himself to throw it at them. With a slight nod towards Naruto, Shikamaru and the rest of the team fled the clearing just as Naruto's chains speared through the enormous boulder in a deafening crash. Mito flitted across the treetops of the forests of the High no Kuni, following the three sound ninja as they ran for the Ta no Kuni border, traveling as close as she dared to the spider-like shinobi. She thought his name was Kitamaru. She was urgently trying to decipher the seals on the barrel. However, her mind was not in it, she was pondering the enigma that was the curse seal. Mito, in all of her sealing mastery and experience, had never seen such an effusion of chakra as that emitting from the small seal that was branded on all of the Sound 4, and in an entirely academic way, she was fascinated by it. A seal with a chakra source of its own was somewhat unbelievable. Seals could not manufacture chakra, only store it. Not to mention that the seal stank to her acute senses of corrupted chakra, but she could see that it wasn't containing a demon or even the chakra of one. If it was, the rate of chakra seepage through the seal would have meant that the potency of its flow would visibly reduce. No. What she was looking at right now was something alien to her knowledge, something totally in the realm of the unknown, but the possibility for a seal to actually create chakra intrigued her, seducing her with its possibilities. After all, if she could adapt it to her own matrix, she would be free from the chakra leash tying her abilities to Naruto-kun's. She was interrupted from her thoughts by the mutterings between the sound shinobi. "Oi, bird brain." Taiuya needled Saken, who looked torn between amused and angry at the constant insults uttered by the only kunoichi in the group. "Why are we moving so slowly? Waiting for the fattest to catch up? No. We're just conserving our energy for if we run across any more patrols. We want to be able to fight our way out. We wouldn't need to bother if we crawl like this," Taiuya mumbled. "If you shitheads don't fucking pick your pace up, Orochimaru-sama will probably give us Demanda." Seeing Kitamaru snicker, she turned on him. "What are you laughing at, you spindly arsehole? I don't care if you want to be fucking snakebait, if you don't fucking move faster, I'm taking that bloody barrel and getting out of here." Mito, listening to the conversation, was getting increasingly worried. According to her senses, the Konoha team was at least 5 minutes away, and from what Sanada had told her, there was no patrols that were likely to meet this group. If they accelerated now, they would probably get away without any further interruption. She couldn't allow that, however she didn't want to use jutsu either, what with the chakra drain to Naruto in a potentially hostile situation. Her choices were taken out of her hands immediately afterwards. Saken was nodding. "All right, we'll go first level of the curse seal until the border. Taiuya, Kitamaru, can you handle that?" Kitamaru frowned. "I can, I guess. But I really wanted to play with that clone-spawning Konoha nin, that would have been a boss battle." Taiuya smirked, the markings of her curse seal already spreading through her body. "Of course I can handle that. Who did you think I was, birdbrain, you?" Mito sighed, hoping she didn't do anything to seriously endanger Naruto. Snapping through a few deliberate hand seals, she intoned, "Genjutsu. Net of tranquility." Shikamaru was troubled as he led the team, sans Naruto, across the forests in trail of the Sound Shinobi and Sasuke. At their rear they could still make out the signs of Naruto fighting with that behemoth of a shinobi. Naruto, Shikamaru had always thought him a bit of a mystery, with his inexplicable friendship with the Sandaime Hokage. However, during this mission it had seemingly come to a head. Naruto was proving more and more of an enigma the more the mission progressed, and it didn't make Shikamaru any less wary of the blonde-turned-red head. Shikamaru had noticed when Naruto had substituted with one of the numerous Kage Bunshin that he had flooded the landscape with. The rather well-executed substitution had not really irked him, it would have been folly to expose the original. Moreover, he had been more than slightly stunned by then. Being a technique derived from the Nara clan's Kuroi Bunshin, Shikamaru knew the limitations of the solid clone technique. For Naruto to use it to create possibly 1,000 clones without even looking winded meant that he had chakra reserves beyond belief. Shikamaru doubted that even the Sandaime Hokage, jutsu powerhouse that he was, could have spawned as many. But he knew that his erstwhile partner in skipping academy lectures had rather unbelievable reserves. No, what had truly troubled the spiky-haired Chunin was the strange mood swings that Naruto had exhibited, and he had not forgotten the strangely colored chakra that Naruto had emitted during his altercation with Sakura. Suddenly, the surrounding was rocked by a giant explosion. A giant cloud of dust erupted from behind them before an unearthly scream was heard. Reflexively looking back along with the others, even Neji, he saw a sight that made his stomach turn. In the light of the noonday sun, glinting in the sunlight, 3 of the strange chain-like chakra constructs that Naruto had employed earlier rose into the sky, weaving around each other. And speared at the top of it, with chains piercing through his head, heart and stomach, lay the undoubtedly dead body of Jirabu. Shikamaru thought it may have been the sun, but for a moment, the chains had seemed more red than the gold they had been before. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The Carnival of Blood. Drip, drip, drip. A figure was lying prone on the ground in the middle of an enormous crater. It was a boy, wearing the tattered remnants of a jumpsuit, and he was covered in blood, none of which were his. The boy was also, to his complete surprise, not dead. Speaking of not dying, that was close. Naruto thought as he finally recovered his equilibrium enough to open his eyes. What in the nine hells happened anyway? His shocked eyes observed the pillar of chakra chains protruding from his stomach rather clinically, as if it was simply an amusing artifact, until with yet another drip, a drop of viscous liquid fell onto his face. When he absently wiped it away, his hand stained a dark, unclean red. Looking up, his gaze slid along the chains, which had curious crimson veins in them, to the top, where his stomach turned in disgust. The dead body of Jirabu was hanging there, held up by 3 of his spiked chains piercing his body. One through the head, one through the heart and the other through the stomach. The stomach was torn open and his eyes wide open in a terrified stare. Curiously blackish blood was pouring through the chains from various gaping wounds, dripping to the ground around him. How had he gotten here? Flashback. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Stay still, Konoha trash. Why, so you can punch me? No thanks. 3 chakra chains curved around Jirabu's still figure, attacking spearing at him from opposite sides. Jirabu twisted around, avoiding the coordinated attacks of the chakra chains while trying to find the real Naruto, who kept out of his reach. Fine. You want to play it that way? A rat fist? Pressure palm. With a resounding crash, Jirabu struck the ground with an open palm, creating a minor earthquake that managed to dispel most of the clones. However, in the next second he had to vacate his position as Naruto's spike chains veered into him. Jirabu grimaced, running forward again to engage his ever-elusive target. I'm getting fed up with you, midget. Naruto cracked a grin. So what are you going to do about it? Reaching down, Jirabu clenched his hands on the ground. Doten. Dario Dango. Before Naruto could puncture the giant boulder like before, it was flying towards him. Hastily crossing his arms before him, Naruto intoned, spike chains. Barrier. The 3 chains rearranged themselves into a web-patterned shield. When the rock smashed into the barrier though, it held for about a second before the sheer bulk of the projectile overwhelmed it. The giant boulder crashed into the place where Naruto had been, with a resounding crash. Then a puff of chakra smoke erupted from the ruins of the boulder, and Naruto raced from behind Jirabu, holding a swirling ball of chakra. Rasengan. Jirabu hastily turned towards him, flipping through hand seals. Doten. Doroku Geshi. A slab of stone hinged up from the ground shielding Jirabu, only to be bored through by the Rasengan. However, when he drilled through the earth slab, his torso came into contact with Jirabu's knee. A rat fist? Rising knee. The Naruto burst into smoke, revealing it to be yet another Kage Bunshin, just as another spike chain whipped into Jirabu. Jirabu jumped back, increasing the distance between him and Naruto. Abandoning his attempts to get closer to Naruto and settling into a stance. Curse Seal Level 2. Activate. Jirabu started to morph, his hair extended, his skin colored, and warts started to appear on his face. Naruto looked on, intrigued. Wow. You got even uglier than before. With a roar, Jirabu launched himself at Naruto. A rat fist? Rock attack. Naruto attempted to dance away from the attack like he had been doing during the whole fight, only to find that Jirabu's transformation had not been entirely cosmetic, he had become exponentially faster. With a sickening crack, Jirabu's fist buried itself into Naruto's chest. He could dimly hear his ribs break before he was flung backwards and into a tree. Struggling to breathe, he found himself vomiting blood, staining the torn remains of his jumpsuit. You're finished, little Genin. Jirabu scoffed, turning away. I'm Jirabu of the South Gate. Did you really think a Genin like you could beat me? Naruto's vision stained red as Kyuubi chakra erupted around his body. Jirabu had just finished his fight with the annoying clone spawning Maverick Genin. After all, no one could get back up from having their chest caved in, even if the boy's ribs had not gone into his heart and pierced his lungs, the force would have liquefied some of the organs in his torso. What a waste, he idly thought as he walked back out of the clearing, slowly releasing his cursed seal. I could really have used his chakra. A red glow filled the area behind him, causing him to twist around in shock, only to have pain shoot across his body as crimson claws sliced across his torso. He looked up in disbelief, coming face to face with the creature that the Genin that should have been dead had become. Crimson, viscous chakra was coiling around the red head in coils as he crouched on all fours, growling at Jirabu like an enraged beast. The whisker-like markings had thickened considerably, and his crimson eyes were glaring at him, suffused in killing intent. His 3 chakra chains were present behind him, swaying in a hypnotic rhythm. Jirabu noticed that the previously golden chains had crimson veins traversing their length, while the base of the chains seemed to have been set on fire. Jirabu's wounds hissed as they attempted to heal due to the influence of the cursed seal, even as the possessed Genin in front of him snarled at him, his whole body wrapped in an unnatural crimson glow. A moment passed, with the 2 transformed shinobi staring at each other across the clearing. Then, snarling at each other, they leapt at each other, intent to kill. Leaning back to avoid an uppercut from Jirabu, Naruto slashed wildly at him with his claws, followed by his chains lunging at Jirabu as he attempted to evade the rushing claws. Jirabu managed to block the majority of the attacks with his increased speed, but the 3rd spike chain, coming at him from behind, tore into his side as he dodged. Cursing fluently, Jirabu immediately backtracked. Who the hell are you? He asked disbelievingly, receiving only a roar in reply before the beast-like Genin tore towards him. Note to self, don't get too close to a person with a cursed seal. Naruto thought, dazed, as he tried to get up from the punishing blow to his chest. It felt like he had been hit with a battering dam. He could distinctly feel that several of his ribs were outright broken, and he was having trouble breathing. Blood was filling his mouth, and he was somewhat sure that his lungs were punctured, or worse. The pain was excruciating. Why had he gotten so close to Jirabu, and why hadn't he retreated when he had upgraded his cursed seal? Well, he could perhaps take solace in the fact that he wouldn't die from this, seeing as the fox wouldn't let him. The fox. Naruto could remember the hazy outline of a conversation he had had just before they parted. A nagging voice in his head was telling him that it was somehow important. What had she said? If anything even grazes you, it gives the fox an opening to push its own chakra into your body, and we don't need to stress your body on top of everything else. Oh. Shit. He could already feel an unnatural warmth spreading from his seal, chakra being released in an ever-increasing deluge that covered his body. His body, stressed out already from the Uzumaki molding, would not be in good enough shape to let him handle the power, even the paltry amount that he normally could. And he knew the seal was stressed. He had checked on it yesterday, and the cracks running along the length of the control rune at the center had not been reassuring. He would have had to strengthen the seal in about 3 years' time, based on the speed of decay. But with this latest complication, he would be lucky for it to last the mission. The acid-like chakra was racing along his chakra coils, scorching them and healing them at the same time as his body was glowing in the reddish glow of the chakra. He barely had time to look at the phenomenon, however, since in the next moment the chakra had reached his head. Rip, tear, hate, kill. His bones were popping, his body reassembling his mangled chest as he got into a crouch, snarling. But Naruto was not aware. No, Naruto was locked in his own mind, blinded by the extreme negative feelings that were running rampant throughout his mind courtesy of the Kyuubi. Disinterested in the current battle in favor of letting his mind survive the vicious assault, his mind retreated to itself, protecting itself from the rage of the Kyuubi that had never felt so terrible, so undiluted, so pure. So Naruto sat there, in the darkness, haplessly fighting to protect himself from the unnatural emotions as outside a beast raged, raining primordial destruction on the creature that had been monumentally stupid enough to anger it. Jirabu, for the first time since his fight with Kimimaro, feared for his life. He had tried bashing boulders on the beast, he had tried pummeling it to death, and he had even once succeeded in capturing it in another Dorodomu. However, it was proving to be useless in stopping it, and it was proving to be nothing if not relentless in its attempts. It would simply regenerate from whatever wounds Jirabu managed to inflict on it in a shorter time than Jirabu took to inflict them in the first place, and the wounds it placed on him in return proved to especially immune to the cursed seal's healing. Not to mention that the one time he tried to absorb the beast's chakra in his Dorodomu, the chakra had scorched his chakra pathways and almost caused him to drop out of his cursed seal mode, only getting another slash across his shoulder for the trouble. Compounding his problems, the twinges of pain originating from his cursed seal were getting worse. He was running out of time. He was rudely interrupted when a chakra chain snagged his tunic, throwing off his balance and making him stumble onto an equally surprised Naruto, who growled at him even as Jirabu tried to leap away. The ever-present chakra chains circled behind Jirabu, the large lethal spikes aimed at his head as Jirabu was in midair. When Jirabu was milliseconds away from a gory death, however, Naruto seemingly went into shock. His crimson eyes dilated, the red slowly bleeding out as the chains disintegrated in midair. Naruto's body continued to spasm for a few seconds before going still. Jirabu cautiously got up, staring at the boy. His cursed seal was troubling him, but he had been a worthy opponent, and he deserved to be dispatched as such. Concentrating what remained of the cursed seal's power to one hand, his body slowly leached of the cursed seal's influence except his hand, which was now wreathed in malevolent-looking purple chakra. Heh. I was hoping to use this on Kimimaro, he thought wryly as he prepared for a final attack. A rat fist? Palm of finality. As Jirabu's chakra-wreathed palm neared his face, Naruto's eyes snapped open, clouded blue eyes staring at the approaching hand in confusion, even as his body instinctively rolled away from the attack. Jirabu stumbled at missing his mark, slamming his palm into the ground in an overwhelming explosion of shrapnel. Off balance, Jirabu fell in a heap onto a seemingly unconscious Naruto, who was bleeding over his eye himself from the shrapnel from Jirabu's latest attack. Old man. Naruto murmured. What did you say, trash? Jirabu demanded belligerently, struggling to end Naruto's life as he lifted one bulky hand towards Naruto's throat. I said. This is for the old man. 3 chains burst from Naruto's navel, shooting through Jirabu, killing him instantly as they punched through his body, carrying it into the air pinned onto the spiked edges. Naruto let out a relieved sigh. "I did it," he observed, before he succumbed to exhaustion. End of flashback. Groaning, Naruto pushed the corpse of Jirobu off his chains, letting it hit the ground in a spurt of blood as he struggled to get up, ignoring his protesting body. He had no time for this, not when the others were in danger. Struggling to his feet, he broke into a stumbling run onwards without a backwards glance at the bleeding corpse of his first real kill, disappearing into the forest following the discreet swirl markings left by Mito. Mito had to say she enjoyed the frustrated looks on the sound shinobi as they tried, and failed, to enter the initial cursed seal stage. Of course, seeing as it was a quite elementary technique, she supposed the illusion would shatter soon. After all, if one managed to even nudge the cursed seal awake, the resulting chakra infusion would tear away the rest of the illusion. Those fucking Konoha bastards must have done something. Tayuya muttered angrily as she continued to try to activate her cursed seal while running. Saken shrugged, only the minute twitch of his eyes giving away his unease. "It doesn't matter. We don't need the seals to take care of trash." Kidomaru grinned sharply. "This game is getting even more interesting." He crowed madly. "I hope Jirobu left some for me. I could use a good fight." Saken looked ready to reprimand Saken when the trees behind him rustled due to a pursuing shinobi. Taking alert stances, they were relieved to find it was only Jirobu. Up in the trees behind them, Mito sighed in relief. Finally the Konoha team had caught up. It happened in an instant. Jirobu suddenly wrenched the barrel from Kidomaru's hands and jumped back as a pair of spinning blurs smashed into a surprised Saken, launching them into the air and down a precipice. With a roar of rage, Kidomaru leapt at Shikamaru, who had transformed back, only to be blocked by a genin in white clothes and distinctive pupil-less eyes. "A Hyuga." Kidomaru sneered savagely at Neji. "A Hyuga? Are you that eager to die, trash?" Neji, not deigning him with a reply, simply settled into a Jyoiken stance, activating his Byakugan. Meanwhile, Tenten was staring at the precipice down which Kiba, Akamaru and the strange two-headed shinobi had fallen. Muttering an expletive, she turned to Shikamaru, who was warily eyeing the female member of the Sound Four. "I'm going after Kiba." Shikamaru nodded tiredly, handing the barrel to Chaoji. "This is so troublesome." Tayuya smirked condescendingly at Shikamaru. "You're going to fight me, you scrawny rat?" Shikamaru looked at her, eyes lidded. "You really like talking, don't you, troublesome woman?" Ignoring a steaming Tayuya, he turned to Chaoji. "Chaoji, get that barrel back to Konoha as soon as possible," he said seriously, wincing as Neji activated Kaiten to deflect some of Kidomaru's projectiles. Turning back to Tayuya, he ran off, eager to put some distance between them and the other fight. She ran after him, forming hand seals and snarling at him. "Don't you dare run, you rat. I'm going to fucking crush you so bad, they'll have to scrape you off to bury." Kuchiyu's no jutsu. Multiple puffs of smoke issued from behind her, causing Shikamaru to scowl. "Of course I had to get the angry girl with the summons. Troublesome." The smoke dissipated, revealing three enormous and grotesque figures behind Tayuya. Shikamaru, losing his composure, gaped. "What the hell is that?" Tayuya gave him a predatory grin, her cursed seal markings spreading over her body in jagged lines. "Cursed seal level 1? Activate. These are my doki, shithead. So, ready to die?" Chaoji rushed back towards Konoha, stubbornly trying not to think of what Shikamaru and the others were facing and failing miserably in the attempt. It had not escaped him that the original team formation that Shikamaru had banked on for their triumph over the team of higher-ranked nin had been destroyed in the chaos of the splintered groups that were now fighting for their lives in the forest. Kiba taking on the apparent leader may have surprised him for a moment, but it was hardly a surprise. The Inyazuka had been spoiling for a fight ever since his loss to Naruto, and his rapid progress had probably pushed a thorn deeper, leading Kiba to do something daring in order to show Naruto who was the alpha of the pack. Shikamaru taking on Genjutsu user as the strategist and long-range attacker of the group was a no-brainer, though Chaoji still felt nervous when he thought of Shikamaru facing the foul-mouthed redhead. And it was natural that as the team member possessing the best defense, Neji would engage the spider-like nin, who seemed capable of creating weapons at will. But Naruto, who had fought, no, was fighting, he wouldn't lose hope. The plump team member? If Naruto had not interfered, it would have been his fight, that much he knew. His techniques were the best possible matchup for Jirobu, so why had Shikamaru not ordered them to switch? With a faint sense of horror, Chaoji realized that Shikamaru had made a tactical decision to leave Naruto to fend for himself. Naruto's presence had led to tensions within the team, and Naruto was strong enough to pose a threat to any of the Sound Four. And though Shikamaru would have denied it to his dying breath, Shikamaru would have been relieved to not send Choji into danger and possible death. Shikamaru had considered Naruto the most expendable of the team, which was a sobering thought. Clenching his fist slightly, Choji quickened his pace as he sprinted back to Konoha, conveniently backtracking to the first confrontation. After all, even with all the mystery surrounding Naruto lately, he was Choji's friend. He only hoped it was not too late as he quickened his pace, clutching the barrel tightly. Behind him, invisible, Mito flitted through the treetops, keeping a lookout for any signs of Naruto. She was pretty sure that her decision to use a genjutsu on the Sound Nin had been warranted. After all, she still didn't fully understand the mechanics of the cursed seal. If it enhanced their physical abilities as she suspected, the Konoha team might have never caught up to them. Still, using lone chakra without prompting, while the donor was in a combat state, was no joke. Not to mention that she had felt the slightest whisper of the Kyuubi's vile scent in the chakra transmitted to her. The transference seal she had on him would normally filter out perceived impurities in the donor's chakra, but a caustic chakra lie the Kyuubis could still cause it to burn out. Which meant that Naruto, and by association her seal, had been subject to a strong dose of Kyuubi chakra recently. That was not reassuring. Still, the Akimichi boy, Choji, was not moving in the direction of Konoha, which was to south-southeast of their location, but south, retracing their steps. This meant that he was going to check up on Naruto and possibly team up with him before they retreated to Konoha. The bushes rustled slightly below, bringing her out of her reverie. Choji seemed to have not heard it, but Mito saw one of his hands creeping towards his kunai chain. She smirked. That was nothing less than what she had expected from an Akimichi, who were notorious for their hunting abilities and forestry, together with the Nara clan. Suddenly a group of small projectiles impacted the ground in front of Choji, who immediately somersaulted above the projectiles, landing on a nearby branch facing his attacker. Choji took out his kunai chain, draping it over his body as his opponent emerged from the bushes. It was a young man, looking to be in his late teens, with white hair dressed in a loose, long-sleeved shirt and black pants. He had a purple inverted bow similar to the other members of the Sound Four, and his green eyes took in the Konoha shinobi carrying the barrel superiorly, as if he was above dealing with him. But there was one thing Mito noticed with increasing unease. The boy had 2 red circular clan markings on his forehead, denoting him a member of the Kaguya clan. Looking intently at the projectiles aimed at Choji, she noticed that they were bones, specifically digits of fingers. So they were facing a Shikatsumaku user, a bone manipulator of the cursed clan of Kaguya clan of Mizuno Kuni. Mito could feel what little chakra she could manipulate in her body pulsing as she prepared to fight. Her body was getting ready to fight. She knew for certain that the young Akimichi of Naruto's class did not have a ghost of a chance against a Kaguya, especially one with a bloodline. The bloodthirsty nature of the clan was long documented. Even her brother Shin, who was famous for his love of battle, had hesitated entering the Kaguya lands. That, combined with their bloodline, had given the Kaguya clan a demonic reputation, with the civilian population of Mizu considering them advocates of the Shinigami. And now she was to fight one. The lack of fluctuations in Naruto's chakra meant that his particular fight was over, but that gave no specification on Naruto's condition. She did not even know if she could safely leech any more chakra from him without endangering his life. However, she could not allow Choji to face this monster without backup, especially when handicapped by the large barrel. It looked like Choji would be the first of Naruto's classmates to learn of her existence. Meanwhile, the white-haired Kaguya was talking to Choji. His voice was a monotone, as if he was utterly uninterested in what he was saying. "Hand over Sasuke-sama, trash. I do not have time to kill you now." Choji tightened his grip on the barrel, and Mito saw the chakra flow in his arms become erratic. He was no doubt preparing for one of the multi-size techniques of his clan. "You can go to hell. Call off your guard dogs and exit the land of fire, or be killed for trespass." The Kaguya's face twitched. "Ah well. In that case, Konoha Genin, I am Kaguya Kimimaro, and I will be your executioner." Bones grew out of his palms, elbows, shoulders and knees in sharp, lethal-looking spikes. Dance of the Willow. Kiba rolled to a stop at the base of the cliff he had taken a dive into, finally stopping his momentum to come to a stop near Akamaru, who had regained his feet before Kiba. Said dog was growling at something behind him, so with a groan he stood up, only to find the figure of the sound shinobi he had tackled slowly getting up. "Oh man, guess it was too much to ask for you to die in the fall?" Kiba asked rhetorically as the strange two-headed man finally got up, glaring at him. You are going to pay for that, Konoha trash. He spat out before the head facing backwards spoke. For once I agree, little brother. Trash like you should not attack their superiors if you don't want to die. Kiba scoffed. I don't know what sort of freak you are, you bastard, but you are going down. 4 legs technique? Beast human clone. Akamaru turned into a clone of Kiba, who had gained animalistic characteristics of his own after the 4 legs technique. Priming themselves, the two jumped at the opposing shinobi, spinning like a pair of drills. Gatsuuga. The Gatsuuga tore through the stationary Saken, but as Kiba turned back, he found 2 people where one had been before, completely unharmed with a black pattern on their skin, covering opposite halves of their bodies. Cursed Seal Level 1? Activate. What the hell? The pair simply smirked as they approached each other before they, to Kiba's surprise, merged at the hip, leaving one person standing with 2 torsos. The strange figure leapt above him, landing behind the spinning Kiba before extending his leg in a roundhouse kick. Multiple connected feet. Solid feet materialized from the extended foot, repeatedly battering Kiba from behind, making him crash into the ground. Using his partner as a cover, Akamaru in his beast human clone state spun above the falling Kiba into Saken's face. Saken crossed his hands over his chest confidently as Lacan completely disappeared into him, intoning multiple connected fists. From his crossed hands, fists appeared, growing off each other as they battered the incoming Akamaru with repeated punches. Akamaru flew away from barrage of fists, his transformation dispelling as he hit the ground with a yelp. Saken scoffed. Did trash like you really think you could take me, Saken of the West Gate, on by yourself? The head hanging from his neck chortled. Aren't you forgetting someone, little brother? My name is Lacan Konoha Trash, and this is my brother Saken. Remember the names, for they are the names of your killer. Kiba got up slowly, wiping a trail of blood from his mouth and smirking. Didn't the snake bastard tell you not to monologue in the middle of a fight? Now, Akamaru. Dynamic marking. The brothers settled into a defensive stance as Akamaru leapt up from behind Kiba, employing an elementary tsuga. However, instead of drilling towards them as Saken expected, Akamaru instead made a white overhead pass. A moment later, Saken and Lacan were sprayed with a strong-smelling liquid, dousing them. Ugh, Saken grimaced, did your dog just piss on me? Now I'm getting angry. I'm going to kill you. Kiba, who had used Saken's momentary distraction to slip past them and beside Akamaru, spoke through a fit of giggles. Oh, I get it, you're pissed. Lacan growled at the pun as Kiba sniggered, settling into a stance. Let's see you punch this. Human-beast combination transformation. Double-headed wolf. An enormous cloud of chakra smoke erupted around Kiba and Akamaru. Brother Lacan spoke warily, looking at the chakra cloud. Saken nodded, and they went rigid. Cursed Seal Level 2. Activate. The smoke cleared, revealing a snarling, enormous twin-headed wolf standing where Kiba and Akamaru had been. Then one head snarled. Garoga. Saken looked at Lacan in alarm as the giant wolf bore down on him. Then, in unison, they went through a series of hand seals. Summoning? Rashomon? With a cloud of chakra smoke, a sturdy gilded gate appeared between the transformed Inuzuka and their target. As they crouched behind the Rashomon gate, which was denting in the middle due to the force of the Garoga, they heard a strange hissing coming from around them. Looking around them in alarm, they saw 6 kunai surrounding them in a hexagon, each primed with an exploding tag. Then a female voice called out from behind them. Couldn't let you boys have all the fun now, could I? 6-pointed star. The world exploded around Saken. You are the most troublesome girl I've ever fought with. Shikamaru noted with a moan as he jumped back to avoid an enormous fist of a doki, which shattered the branch he was on. Tayuya cackled, playing on her flute. Really? What are you going to do about it, you fucking scrawny rat? Shikamaru didn't reply immediately as he weaved between the doki to come between them and their mistress. But in a puppeteer like you, the human is the weak link. Kajime no Jutsu, complete. A tendril of shadow attached itself to Tayuya's feet, coming from the opposite direction of the Chunin in question. Tayuya could only stare in frustration as the Shikamaru in front of him dissolved into smoke, a simple bunshin. Then suddenly, Tayuya was no longer there, and he was holding off the sharpened edge of the flute with a kunai. Tayuya had a feral grin on her face. Did you really think you could fool a genjutsu user with a bunshin, Konoha Trash? She taunted Shikamaru, using her superior physical strength to overpower him, the sharpened flute slowly digging into his neck. If a fucking scrawny rat like you is the fucking chunin in your fucking group, it's no wonder the Uchiha left your pathetic village. Seeing as your village isn't fucking strong enough to keep the good ninja, maybe you could have simply let him go? Now your scrawny ass and all your fucking friends are going to die. Shikamaru suddenly pushed her flute away, ducking under it to swipe at her legs with a kunai before tumbling backwards to avoid retaliation. Tayuya leapt up to avoid him, settling down on branch nearby before starting to play her flute again. Shikamaru hid in the undergrowth nearby, his hand dabbing at his neck, which was slowly dripping blood from a shallow, jagged cut from the flute. He could hear Tayuya's doki stumbling around the clearing, clearly searching for him, as the haunting melody of the flute reverberated throughout the forest. "Where are you, you fucking bastard? You think you can hide from me?" Revolt of the demon world. Strange chakra constructs emerged from the mouths of the doki, translucent worm-like creatures with a multitude of gaping mouths. They were sniffing the surroundings to the tune of the flute, bobbing and weaving as they tried to smell out their prey. "Give it up, Konoha trash," Tayuya's gloating voice came from the clearing. "These spirits are made from spiritual energy. As long as your scrawny ass has any physical energy left, they're going to lead me right to you." Something strange was going on here, Chaoji thought as he continued to dodge the spinning bone wielder with surprising ease. He had thought it would have been tougher than this, what with the guy's appearance. But the man seemed to always a hair too slow or too fast to hit him, and Chaoji, as confident as he was about his own skills, knew that he would have been no match for his opponent if not for his seemingly random lapses in judgment. Not to mention that he was fighting while having to protect the barrel, whereas Kimi Maro had no such restriction. However, he had seen flashes of what looked like stylized dragons around the bone wielder before he missed Chaoji in a strike. Kimi Maro seemed to be more upset than anyone else in the vicinity. He kept muttering about genjutsu, though Chaoji could not see how that could be possible. After all, he was the only one fighting Kimi Maro at all, and surely if there was a Konoha shinobi in the area they would help. However, Chaoji was not one to ponder in the middle of battle, that was more Shika's style. Instead, he pulled out his kunai chain. Multi-size technique. Spiked human bullet tank. Kimi Maro turned instinctively towards the threat but was too late to stop the giant mass of kunai and flesh from rolling over him. Instead he tucked and rolled into a ball before 3 feet long spikes grew out of the vertebrae in his back. There was no time to change course. Chaoji would run into the man who rather resembled a porcupine at the moment and he would run himself into the spikes. Then, suddenly, a ghostly woman in an aristocratic clan attire appeared before him, looking alarmed even as a crimson-veined spiked chakra chain wound around him, redirecting his momentum into a nearby tree. A rough feral voice called out from the treetops. "You all right, Chaoji, ghost lady? What the hell's going on here?" End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The Molting of the Mayfly. Kiba had just made some headway with the giant summon gate when an enormous explosion ripped the gate apart. Blown back by the force and dazed, he was thankful that the gate was unsummoned following its destruction, or the debris might have torn him apart. He heard a whine and looked down to see Akamaru, having reverted back to his normal form from the blast, lapping at a narrow trail of blood running down his flank, courtesy of one of Lucan's earlier punches. Then he heard a sniggering female voice in front of him, which he was unable to identify due to the ringing in his ears and the acrid smoke in his nose. Akamaru whimpered again. It seemed he too had been affected by the noise of the explosion and the destruction of the gate. "Kiba-san? Sorry about that, I guess, it's just. I saw the perfect opportunity." Now he remembered where he had heard that particular voice. It was that bun-haired girl who had lost to that sand chick in the Chunin exam. Now he just had to figure out why she was here. "Kiba-san? I said I'm sorry, now stop napping and come with me to help the others." Right, he was with the others and they were on a mission to retrieve Sasuke? Why would he go after the Temme? Instinctively clutching at his forehead, Kiba stumbled to an upright position, gently depositing Akamaru inside the shredded remains of what had once been his favorite hoodie. It was after this that his eyes focused on the impatient Kunoichi in front of him. Tenten-san, isn't it? You were on the same team as that bastard Neji. What are you doing here? The Kunoichi frowned before leaning into his face and peering at him. Are you in shock or something? Maybe this will help. With that, she gave him a prompt cuff on the back of the head, spinning him around and into the nearby stream. Kiba came to, sputtering, as he pulled his face out of the stream. "Why would you do that?" he asked indignantly, as the girl giggled hysterically. "You were in shock," she replied unrepentantly. "Now come on. Neji has probably gotten in over his head already." Kiba stuttered. "But, the guy we were fighting is probably in 1,000 pieces. I thought the stupid idiot would jump. I didn't even get a proper fight." Kiba looked at where she was pointing and barely managed not to vomit. What remained in the crater could not be identified as human or even something that was once alive. Burned, shredded and crushed, it smoked in the crater, emanating the most disgusting stench of burnt flesh. "Yeah," Kiba said weakly, turning away from the corpse, "that guy's dead. Let's go." As they sprinted away to find a way back up the cliff, neither saw the grim face of Vulcan peeking out from the back of Kiba's head. Neji skipped away from yet another golden projectile, almost lazily reaching out with a Juican strike to sever the spider thread attached to it as he landed in a crouch. At the other end of the clearing, Kitamaro grinned. "You're getting really interesting, Trash," he said, grinning as his spider sticky gold to form a set of boomerang-like weapons for each of his 6 hands. "Care to try closer?" Neji charged forward as Kitamaro continued to send volley after volley of webbing at him. Each time the webbing close to snaring him, he would strike it with a precise Juican strike, dissolving the thread. Batting away his webbing at every turn, Neji slowly advanced even as Kitamaro retreated into the forest, spewing webbing from his hands. "Give it up, Sound Shinobi," Neji advised Kitamaro as he disentangled himself from yet another web. The two were within striking distance now. "You're within the range of my divination. 2 palms." Neji crossed the distance between them in an instant, driving 2 Juican strikes into Kitamaru's shoulders. Even as Kitamaru jerked back at the impact, Neji was continuing with the attack. 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 32 palms. Neji stepped into Kitamaru's face as he was flailing from the attack. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Kitamaru was launched away from the branch they were on by the force of the last attack, but suddenly flipped away to land in a crouch on a low-hanging branch. He was grinning. Neji frowned. "Your willpower is commendable, Sound Shinobi, but you can't use chakra now. Give up, and your life will be spared." Kitamaru's mouth twisted into a mocking grin, even as Neji noticed a gold substance flake off from Kitamaru's body. "Guess your Byakugan isn't as all-seeing as you would like it to be, is it, Yuga?" he mocked, before gesturing to the flakes falling off him. "This is my armor of sticky gold. It'll take more than you to put a scratch in my armor." Neji stared at Kitamaru blankly. "You do realize that you gave me a solid reason to use lethal force, don't you?" Kitamaru gave him a challenging grin. "Go on, be my guest. I like it when prey struggle." Neji sighed, jumping down to re-engage his opponent. "I swear, fate has a strange sense of humor. Why can't I get a normal opponent for once?" Chaoji, now out of his multi-size technique and sporting a rather generous gash on his shoulder, looked nervously between the 3 shinobi that were staring at each other across the center of the clearing where the barrel containing Sasuke stood. The Sound Shinobi, Kimi Mero, stood at one end, sharp bone spikes sticking out of his arms, legs, shoulders and spine, with a strange black pattern spreading through his body, originating from the strange 3-line seal below his throat. His green eyes were flashing with irritation. At the other end was Naruto, only he looked a lot different, even when compared to the red-haired version that had come to the mission. His orange jumpsuit was in tatters, the top barely hanging onto the frame. His canines looked large, his unique whisker markings whiter, giving him a feral look. His eyes looked bloody, the sclera bloodshot and curious crimson veins traversing the irises. Blackish half-clotted blood matted his hair in clumps, running down his clothes and the remains of his clothes. A blue-black bruise was clearly visible on his exposed chest, and 3 golden chains with strange crimson veins within them were protruding from his lower back. Between them, nearest to the barrel, stood the woman that Naruto had called Ghost Lady. Chaoji could certainly see the reasoning. The woman looked like a colored glass figurine, the destroyed forest around them visible through her translucent body. Her hair, which seemed to be of a reddish shade, was pinned to her sides in 2 buns, somewhat reminiscent of Tenten's, only held up with multiple senbon. She was wearing a white kimono, and she had a pair of seal tags in place of earrings. Also, now that the fight had been halted for a moment, she looked completely calm, in contrast to Naruto and Kimi Mero, who were flooding the surroundings with killing intent. For a moment, the 3 stared at each other. Then Kimi Mero scoffed. "You Konoha shinobi are all very eager to die, more's the pity that I don't have the time. And you, woman. You were the one who kept trying to put me in a genjutsu, weren't you?" Mito snarled, at odds with her expressionless face. "I'm Mito of the Uzumaki clan, Kaguya." She spat at the Sound Shinobi, ignoring Chaoji's gasp. "You don't need to tell us about your killing tendencies, we Uzumaki have faced it often enough. I would have thought that your clan would have done this world a favor and gone extinct by now, but of course that's too much to ask from your kind, isn't it, barbarian?" Kimi Mero stared at her blankly. "I have no idea what you're talking about, woman." Now hand me over the barrel containing Sasuke-sama so I can be on my way. Naruto took a stumbling step forward, gritting his teeth. Now see here, sound trash. If you think we'll just allow a shinobi to defect to your bastard master, Kimimaro growled, you're very much mistaken. Die. With a scream, Naruto swung his arm wildly, his chains arsing behind him in unison to crash into the place where Kimimaro was, even as Mito vanished into thin air again with a whisper of rapping oriental dragons. Suddenly, through the dust cloud caused by the chains colliding with the ground, a bone spear broke through. It was followed by Kimimaro, who had what looked like his own ribs jutting out of his body in a protective cocoon. You are an interesting opponent. May I know your name, Konoha-nin? Naruto paused in his charge before a bloodthirsty grin crossed his face. Uzumaki Naruto. And yours? Kaguya Kimimaro. Now prepare to die for opposing Orochimaru-sama. Dance of the Larch. Your master's ambition is as useless as his hands have become. Prepare to die, Kaguya, for treading on lands protected by the Sandame's sacrifice. Kage Bunshin. With a series of pops, close to 100 clones of Naruto appeared, however all but the original lacked the chains waving behind him. Then the clones paired up, cupping their hands over the other for a moment before the forest was lit up with the blue glow of pure chakra, even as Kimimaro attacked the nearest clones in a pirouetting maneuver, cutting a swath of destruction through the multitude of clones. Rasengan. Kimimaro disappeared under the assault of the remaining clones, his bone spears cracking under the assault of the Rasengan, before Kimimaro's chakra pulsed with a yell. Cursed Seal Level 2. Activate. With a spin, all the clones surrounding Kimimaro were shaken off, revealing Kimimaro with a darkened skin and a dinosaur-like tail. Then with the slightest shimmer of a serpentine silhouette, Mito attacked from behind him as Naruto's chains disappeared, only for Kimimaro to somersault over the approaching dragon into a group of Rasengan-wielding clones, which were abruptly dispelled by the bone spears as he spun in place, the needle-sharp bones digging into the clones and obscuring him in a cloud of chakra smoke. Synchronizing with a clone for a moment, Naruto created a Rasengan in his left hand as he materialized one chakra chain through his right arm, giving him a knife edge and several chakra edges throughout his arm. With a yell, he dived into the smoke after Kimimaro, who parried it with the bone emerging from above his palm, his other hand gripping Naruto's above the wrist, stopping the Rasengan from approaching him. With an ominous crack, the bone started to give way as both Naruto and Kimimaro tried to overpower each other. Heh. Looks like your bones can break after all, what do you know? Jumping back at the exact moment that the bone dagger broke, Kimimaro reached for his shoulder as Naruto's Rasengan-wielding hand hit the ground with a deafening crunch. Kimimaro slowly pulled out a bone sword from his upper arm, molding it into a short bone sword before settling into a sword stance. Dance of the Camellia. Within a moment, he was within Naruto's guard, rattling him with repeated puncture wounds before one of his flailing chakra chains caught Kimimaro across the stomach, tossing him away. Naruto fell onto his knees, red chakra bubbling around his wounds for a moment as they hissed and steamed. Then, struggling to his feet, he walked towards Kimimaro, who had also gotten onto his feet, ignoring the blood as it flowed from the gash Naruto's chain had inflicted. Mito stood immobile in the clearing above Choji, who seemed paralyzed by the raw killing intent filling the area, ready to interfere should it be necessary, but she was wary of chakra use so soon after Naruto had suffered an injury, particularly in the wake of clear use of the Kyuubi chakra, showing it to be just below the surface. Besides, in this position, she could easily stop any interference should Choji try to interfere, which would simply get both him and Naruto killed. This was way above the abilities of Choji. Meanwhile, Kimimaro gave Naruto an assessing glance. I thank you Uzumaki-san, this has been a most invigorating battle. However, Orochimaru-sama's business is urgent and my life is dedicated to his duty. I will kill you now. Giving Naruto a fanged grin, to which Naruto responded by sprouting 3 other chains in addition to the one through his arm, Kimimaro reached behind his shoulders. Dance of the Clematis. Vine. Shikamaru barely had the time to move before one of the strange worm-like creatures ghosted into his hiding place. Still, as he jumped away the technique had grazed his arm. Immediately, a bone-aching exhaustion swept through him as he stumbled on the landing and rolled onto the ground. Mocking laughter met his ears as he struggled to get up. There you are, shithead. For a moment I thought you had scurried away, like the rat you are. Shikamaru grimaced. That would be too troublesome to explain, troublesome woman, he grumbled, make no mistake, I'm not here because I want to fight you. Shikamaru's hands twitched, unobtrusively forming a seal. However, as soon as his shadow started to extend, one of Taiuya's doki charged at him, forcing him to leap back. One trick pony, Taiuya scoffed. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you forming seals? Then another of the physical energy leeches lunged at him, but this time, instead of Shikamaru jumping away, he simply stood in position, letting the strange leech pierce his body. Then, around the leech, his body began to blacken and bubble. Then a voice came from behind Taiuya. Kajime no jutsu. Complete. Suddenly, Taiuya couldn't move, immobilized by the Nara clan jutsu. Then, without her volition, her body started to move until she was brought before an utterly relaxed Shikamaru leaning lazily on a nearby tree, looking at her with a smirk. You know, you were correct when you said I couldn't fool a genjutsu user with a bunshin, and you were correct. However, a Nara can fool you with a Kiroi bunshin. Look. Her head unwittingly moved to look at the place where the now still doki had pierced a bunshin, which now contained just her doki and its spirit leech, both covered in a strange black cloak. Shadows, Shikamaru explained somewhat unnecessarily, they are solid enough to not be considered an illusion, yet they cannot contain any physical energy. So when your strange jutsu pinpointed my location, I just waited for it to commit to an attack it couldn't abort, and then substituted with a Kiroi bunshin I had placed there previously. When your attack tried to absorb non-existent physical energy, well, as they were watching, the captured doki began to creak, the black shadows seeping into its structure, creating crevices and cracks as it seemed to melt into it. Then, with a keening wail, the doki and its worm-like protrusion began to disintegrate. Watching Taiuya's face twist in fury, Shikamaru smirked. As you can see, Nara clan jutsu use shadows, which do not play well with other types of energy. Sorry about that. He drawled, seemingly enjoying Taiuya's anger. Just then, Shikamaru ducked to dodge a wild swing by one of the other doki, forcing Taiuya to do the same. This time though, Taiuya was the one grinning when they were upright again. So, shithead, what's your fucking idea to stop that? I'm the only one who can stop them, but as it is, you fucking tied me up. Slowly Shikamaru brought his hands to his mouth, forcing Taiuya to do the same with her flute. I saw you playing, and I can guess the melody. With that, Shikamaru began to mime the notes he wanted to play, but unlike before, Taiuya was actively opposing him, making the melody choppy and unclear as Taiuya fought Shikamaru for control. Beads of sweat were rolling off Shikamaru's face due to the exertion, but he held on doggedly, refusing to release Taiuya from his technique. Damn it. If this goes on, I'll have to use that technique to finish the battle, and on top of it, I'm running out of chakra. Troublesome. The doki continued to stumble around, swinging wildly and showering both combatants with wood chips. Struggling, Taiuya spoke. You've got a good head on your shoulders, shithead. But you're simply too weak for this level. Curse Seal Level 2. Activate. Shikamaru barely managed to sever his connection to Taiuya and leaped back as ominous chakra blanketed the area, originating from Taiuya. Her body was bubbling, changing considerably, with her hair becoming longer and lighter, her skin darker, along with a protrusion of horns emerging from her head. Jumping back, Shikamaru latched his shadows to those of the two remaining doki, hoping to use them two against Taiuya while he figured out his next move. Taiuya just stared at him blankly. Seriously? Do you think I'm a fucking idiot like you? Release. With a puff of chakra smoke, both remaining doki were unsummoned, leaving Shikamaru and Taiuya facing each other on the opposite sides of the clearing, Shikamaru staring at Taiuya, expressionless, while Taiuya gave him a bloodthirsty leer. Well, it's just you and me now, shithead. Now how should I kill you? Kiba and Tenten were sprinting, stumbling in Kiba's case, across the riverbank while looking for a place to climb the cliff separating them from their comrades. Normally they would have simply tree-walked their way up the cliff, but Kiba was adamant that they not attempt it with his and Akamaru's condition. The mood between the two was tense. Kiba was still cross at Tenten for using exploding tags without warning him, while Tenten maintained that warning him would have made the whole attack useless and that Kiba was just jealous that he had not had the kill. Of course, when she made the mistake of saying her opinion out loud, it started Kiba off on a tirade. Jealous? Because of your stupid explosion fetish, Akamaru got hurt, and I almost died. Why did you butt in anyway? I had the fight under control. Yeah right, the great Kiba was pulverizing the poor sound fools. Tenten said sarcastically. Face it, dog boy, you were being led around by your oversensitive nose. Kiba growled at the insult. What the hell's your problem anyway? You could have gone and bugged someone else, like that Neji bastard. I don't need a bloody Kunoichi to babysit me. Tenten's eyes narrowed as she abruptly turned towards him. You better rephrase that, dog boy, she said between gritted teeth as one of her eyebrows twitched in irritation. Or do you have anything against Kunoichi? Startled at her vehemence, Kiba stammered incoherently. Tenten snorted, turning away. Thought so, you chauvinist pig. Suddenly, her instincts, honed by Guy-sensei's habit of randomly attacking his team, flared. Acting subconsciously, she twirled, unsealing a large wooden shield to cover her. With a schlink of wood against metal, a kunai stabbed itself to the hilt and through the hardened wood of the shield, missing her side by inches and leaving a gouge in the ground behind her. Tracing its trajectory, Tenten saw that it had been thrown by Kiba, and judging by her previous position, it had been aimed for her kidneys. With the force in the throw and the angle, it would have caught her side and lacerated both of her kidneys before exiting her body, causing an excruciating and slow death. It was one of the most advanced and disturbing places to target during a fight, and it could not be easily done. Konoha Academy trained students to go for the easier, more obvious choices like the harder throat. Unbelievingly staring at Kiba, who seemed to have gone into shock, she settled into a defensive stance. Did you just try to kill me? The thought itself was ludicrous. Konoha shinobi were taught teamwork and loyalty from their very cradles, and betrayal and desertion was considered to be so abhorrent that even thinking about it was considered taboo, and the punishment for trying to kill a teammate was so horrific that deserting Konoha and having the hunter nins after you was considered to be better. In fact, the stakes were so high that only socially isolated shinobi with turbulent pasts had ever deserted Konoha, which meant that of the 12 rookie genin that had participated in the last Chunin exams, only Sasuke, Naruto and Neji had ever fallen into the risk category. Kiba, who came from the renowned Inuzuka clan, had no possible reason to defect, and though they generally had hot tempers according to Guy-sensei, Kiba couldn't have expected to get away with it. Unless, of course, he wanted to kill her and make it look like the sound shinobi had killed her. But surely he wouldn't try to kill her just because of an argument, at least she hoped so. Trepidation growing, she cautiously brought out a pair of nunchucks as she approached Kiba. Then suddenly Kiba seemingly sprinted at her while simultaneously trying to hold himself back, resulting in him tripping over himself and falling on his face. As Akamaru yelped and leapt clear of Kiba's falling body, Tenten crept forward cautiously towards the figure on the ground, which was writhing in apparent agony. By now she knew there was something very wrong with Kiba. Kiba-san? Then suddenly Kiba was looking at her with mismatched eyes, with the right side of his hair turning white and growing longer, and the skin slowly coloring brown. Struggling to speak, Kiba whispered, "Run. I can't control body." Akamaru whimpered, seemingly afraid to approach his partner. Tenten took a cautious step back, trying to understand what was happening. Then, Kiba's face fell slack as he lunged at Tenten with a kunai. Looking into the forests of the north from her seat in the Hokage Tower, Sanada felt a shiver of premonition. Below her, the village was a beehive of activity, and her Anbu had reported that the story of the Uchiha's desertion was the hottest news in the gossip circles. She knew where the information had leaked from. The Kunoichi in the newest generation seemed unable to grasp the meaning of discretion. Sanada had half a mind to place the lot of them in punishment detail for this particular blunder, but she supposed the results of their actions would be punishment enough. If Sasuke had been retrieved without the story spreading far and wide, there had been a chance that the Uchiha would have been able to get away scot-free. However, seeing as the whole of Konoha knew by now that the last loyal Uchiha had deserted the village for their most hated enemy of the moment, Sasuke would face forced genetic donation, followed by forced seppuku, at best. A mirthless smile graced Sanada's lips at the thought. In a way, his fangirls had signed the Uchiha's death warrant. But she had no time, nor inclination, to worry about the non-existent future of an Uchiha. She was instead worrying over her favorite genin, one Uzumaki Naruto, who had gone on the mission to retrieve the said Uchiha. The conversation she had had with her grandmother prior to their leaving for the mission still echoed in her mind, filling her with anxiety. Flashback. You know, this is a dangerous game you are playing, Tsutsu. Sanada, who had been trying to burrow her head into the wooden desk, jerked up at the sound. Looking up from the cozy nest she had made with her arms, she resisted the urge to groan when all of her Anbu detail were out cold on the floor, again. My games aside, that is really not good for them, grandmother, Sanada stated dryly, looking at her snoring guards with an expression halfway between exasperation and amusement. Though she supposed it was a welcome change after all the headaches that blasted Uchiha had caused her, it was too early to deal with anything other than a hangover cure, damn it. If they get caught in a genjutsu that only traps an unsuspecting mind while they are on guard detail, they deserve any neck cramps they get, you know. Mito's response was just as dry as her granddaughter's. Plus I don't see you doing much better, you know. You didn't even notice me enter and I knocked out all your guards without you even noticing. Sniffing a bit, her lips narrowed. And you've been drinking again, haven't you? Sonata groaned, dropping her head back into her arms. Give me a break, grandmother. I've got a killer headache, the council's breathing down my neck, those two old fossils won't stop pestering me, and that spoiled brat of an Uchiha had to chose now of all times to run off to Snake Face. Do you know how much meetings this is going to cause? And paperwork. I swear I'll kill that brat myself. Get in line, Mito scoffed, sounding uncharacteristically bitter. If Naruto-kun doesn't stain his hands with the traitor's blood, I might kill the bastard myself, and I will make him suffer. Sonata looked at her, shocked. Grandmother? You don't even know that little self-obsessed headcase. Mito snorted. I saw him once, I don't believe I ever want to repeat that experience. That boy is a collection of his clan's worst attributes, you know. She sighed. Though I have to say, Sutsu, your summons came at the worst possible, not to mention downright dangerous moment in our training. Oh? Sonata asked, quirking an eyebrow. Why is that? He should be able to function with his old skills during any battles, and I need the safety net that Naruto and you will provide for the mission. She asked, before continuing to grumble. It's not like I have any Jonin or Chunin to spare, what with the bloody border patrols and that gnome of Tsuchikage probing our lines. Mito snorted. Focus, Sutsu. Now as for your earlier question, the reason is that Naruto's body is still adapting to its changes, not to mention the changes to the seal. What changes to the seal? Sonata interjected, alarmed. Mito groaned. Come on, Sutsu. I've told you about the effects of the Uzumaki bloodlines, especially of the spike chains. And you should know anyway, you were friends with a user. What do you mean, grandmother? Kushina only told me she could suppress chakra with it. Mito smirked triumphantly. But did she ever tell you why? Sonata looked at her, puzzled. What do you mean? Normal spike chains don't suppress chakra, it was unique to Kushina, and for a simple reason. That particular expression has a rather strange ability. Seal transference. Sonata looked at her warily. And what does that do? Mito sighed. It channels the abilities of any seal that is linked to the user's very self. Since Kushina's Jinchuriki seal, which I designed, was in itself a chakra suppression seal, her chains gained the ability to suppress chakra themselves. Seeing as Naruto has not yet gained full control over his powers, and the fact that the isolation seal I put on top of his Jinchuriki seal wouldn't have a ghost of a chance if he got angry, do you see the problem? Sonata looked at her, troubled. You think that the chains could become a conduit for the Kyuubi to come out? Mito ran her hand over her face tiredly. If only that. No, Sutsu, if Naruto is pushed hard enough at this time, he would channel the essence of the seal. And with what Kushina's husband used to bind the seal. Sonata reared back in horror. You don't mean the Shinigami? End of flashback. Sonata was pulled out of her reverie by the sound of hurried footsteps before a messenger burst into her office, panting. Apologies, Sonata-sama. Urgent message from the lookouts in the north gate. Sonata could already feel the headache coming on. What is it? There's a report of a strange jutsu being used in our northern forest, something about crimson chakra chains. Sonata turned around, her chair crashing into the ground. What did you say the color was? Crimson, Sonata-sama. Sonata gritted her teeth. That's it, she declared, ignoring the messenger's wince at her tone. I've had enough of this. Turning to face the frightened messenger, she ordered, inform the council that the village is in lockdown. Send for the Hokage guard and send Kakashi a message that he's got exactly 5 minutes to get here if he doesn't want to be in punishment detail for the rest of his life. Emergency mission, possible S rank. Go. As the messenger scurried away, Sonata searched her desk for her combat attire. Now if Snake Face were there, then it'll be a party, she thought wryly as she strapped her equipment pouch on before staring out of her window at the northern forest. Squinting, she could just make out something that looked like a tentacle poking through the wooded expanse. So that was where Naruto was. At least he was alive. Whatever happens, brat, don't die out there. Kimi Mero's bone whip slashed into a rolling figure, which went up in smoke as two thick chain-like chakra constructs barreled into him from the other side of the clearing. Wincing slightly at their speed, he held his dance of the clematis. Flower-encrusted hand as an impromptu shield. The two chains slammed into the curling bone lance, sending bone chips flying as Kimi Mero skidded back from the force of the impact. Even as he used his dinosaur-like tail to steady himself, Kimi Mero pushed back at the chains with his bone-covered arm. Even as his other hand swung his bone whip at the source of the chains, the ligaments between the vertebrae stretching grotesquely as they tried to wrap around the figure only to meet a barrier in the form of an increasing cage of chakra chains surrounding him. You are now starting to annoy me, Konoha Shinobi. Kimi-Mero's monotonous voice floated around the clearing. In the other end of it, Chaoji, still nursing his wounds, winced at the threat in the voice, while Mito, in the very center of the rather large patch of wood devastated by the fight, bristled, looking up from her intent examination of the barrel containing Sasuke. The fight between Kimi-Mero and Naruto was fierce, with them equal in their speed and agility, with Naruto's multiple chains countered by Kimi-Mero's dance of the clematis techniques. Both of them were panting as they dodged each other's attacks, cuts littering their bodies from near misses. Then, suddenly, in the middle of yet another deadlock, Kimi-Mero suddenly stiffened before his techniques faltered as he spat out blood. Immediately capitalizing on the opening, two chains immediately tore into Kimi-Mero, one piercing his upper thigh and spearing his tail as the other dug into the whip-wielding hand. Hurriedly jumping away while absent-mindedly forming bone plates above his cuts to slow his bleeding, Kimi-Mero's lips set into a thin line. I will not die before I fulfill Orochimaru-sama's purpose, he declared, looking mutinously at the panting Uzumaki before him. Naruto smirked, flashing Kimi-Mero a bloody grin. Then you'll probably have to try being immortal, Kaguya. Kimi-Mero gritted his teeth as he prepared to fight, a sense of futility seeping into him. Even if he defeated this monstrosity, he would still have to fight the disappearing woman and the fat boy. On top of that, his curse seal was enhancing his disease to the point of no return. He would be lucky to survive long enough to report to Orochimaru-sama. Trying to fight through the pain, he stumbled, suddenly feeling dizzy as his knees hit the ground. His mind was getting fuzzy, and his sense of vertigo was increasing, even as he instinctively blocked Naruto's attempts to land a hit on him. Blood was filling his mouth, and he could feel rivulets of blood flowing down his wounded arm through the plates of bone, and his sense of balance was worsening. Then, with an ominous crack, wood splints showered the clearing as the barrel containing Sasuke burst open. Mito, closest to the explosion, barely managed to cross her arms over her face before the explosion tore into her, throwing her into a nearby tree. Immediately afterwards, Naruto felt an immense drain on his chakra as Mito's seal automatically diverted some of his chakra to healing her chakra shell. Letting out an involuntary groan, Naruto sank to his knees in exhaustion, even as the chakra smoke obscuring the remains of the barrel dissipated, showing a monstrous figure standing on the remains of the barrel. Two leathery, hand-like protrusions emerged from the shoulder blades of the creature, and glaring crimson eyes stared at the prone figures of the fighters through long locks of gray hair. Crimson eyes, with spinning black tomo in them, that whitened as they took in the destruction of the clearing. Then the color bled out of the figure, starting from his extremities and reaching towards his shoulder. The creature grew smaller, the leathery hand-like wings disappeared, and then the last remnants of the transformation, black tribal marking, drew back leaving a pale Sasuke standing in the middle of the clearing. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. The Toad in the Ointment. Naruto glared at Sasuke through lidded crimson eyes. Sasuke stared back, the glow of the Sharingan hypnotic in the gloom of the forest. The forest was quiet, any and all fauna had been driven miles away by now, with the continuous clashes of ninja within the forest. The only sounds to be heard were Kimi-Mero's insistent coughing and Chaoji's somewhat hysterical gasps. Mito was still healing from the damage she had taken when the barrel had unexpectedly broken open. Then, Sasuke scoffed. You're the one they sent to stop me, Dobe. They could have as well told me to stay away. Naruto looked incensed. Chaoji, looking from the sidelines, saw his canines peek out of his mouth as a warning growl burst from his throat. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than normal, sounding feral as he glared daggers at the Uchiha. I bet you're proud of yourself, huh, Sasuke? I hope you know you've just signed the death warrant of not only yourself, but the entire Uchiha clan. What a wonderful clan heir you turned out to be, but then I suppose you never were, you know. After all, Itachi is the Uchiha clan heir. Sasuke's Sharingan spun in irritation as he grit his teeth. However, before he could retort to Naruto's taunt, a shaky voice cut in. Sasuke-sama, Orochimaru-sama sends his regards, but you must hurry. You will be late. Go. I will hold them off. And you are Kaguya Kimi-Mero, previous leader of the Sound Five. Looking between Naruto and Kimi-Mero, Sasuke paused, indecisive. Then he shook his head before speaking without turning to face him. Very well. Do not let them follow. I have no time for the likes of them. Turning abruptly, Sasuke sprinted into the forest. With a growl, Naruto leapt to his feet, running after Sasuke, only to run straight into the path of Kimi-Mero's bone vine. Muttering a curse in his throat, he turned to stare murder on the Kaguya. You are going to regret that. In a flash, the surrounding was overwhelmed with clones, each of them carrying a Rasengan as they charged at Kimimaro, who was panting with exhaustion and coughing blood. He gave the approaching Naruto's a somber glance. So it has finally come to this. No matter. I shall die as I have lived, in the service of Orochimaru-sama. Dance of the seedling fern. Bones sprouted from the ground, sharp-tipped curved bones of enormous sizes sprouting all over the patch of forest, making it resemble a monster's graveyard. Most of Naruto's clones had been dispelled in the attack, however a few had managed to cling onto the rising surfaces, while another had managed to rescue the unconscious Mito. Chaoji, looking shell-shocked, had just managed to scramble onto an unharmed tree, and he was now waving frantically to Naruto. "Naruto, you go after Sasuke, I take care of things here." Gesturing wildly at the forest of bones, he looked at Naruto with a small grin. "Besides, this is more suited to my style anyway. Multi-size technique. Human bullet tank." As Chaoji began to carve a path of destruction through the newly created bone forest, Naruto positioned himself in the middle of the bone field. "Don't be mad. I've seen these types of Kekkei Genkai before, and if this is what I think this is, it isn't going to be pretty." Suddenly, all the surviving clones of Naruto began to pop. Well, Naruto thought as his clones continued to dispel, at least he doesn't seem to be able to identify me from the clones. Settling into a meditative stance, Naruto closed his eyes in order to obtain a fledgling sense of where Kimimaro was. After all, he had seen this very same tactic with Haku in the Land of Waves. It was never good news when an elemental Kekkei Genkai user disappeared into the element of his choice. Suddenly, he noticed a warped chakra of Kimimaro right behind Chaoji, hiding inside a bone spear. "Chaoji, get away." Even as Chaoji, still in his round form, bounced up and out of the clearing, 6 spiked chains shot out of Naruto, each traversing the length of the bone field and each at a slightly different height from the other. Kimimaro, half out of the bone spear, barely had time to look shocked as the chains began to spin along their axis, forming 6 drills that tore away nearby bone spears. Naruto held his hands out horizontally, away from his body. "Well, we'll see how this works." Spiked chains. Atomic separator. Naruto spun in place, and the spinning chakra chains whipped through the bone forest with the scraping sound of ground bone. Kimimaro, trapped in place by the very technique he had used, attempted to form a bone cage around him, but before he could complete the bone growth, the first of the chains smashed into his stomach with a spray of blood. Kimimaro's screams echoed around the clearing as one by one, 5 more of the rapidly spinning chains crashed into his half-emerged body. When Naruto's technique finally stopped, a silence descended on the clearing. Chaoji, safely out of the range of the clearing, gulped nervously. He seemed to be holding back the urge to retch, and as the bone splinters settled, Naruto understood as the area around where Kimimaro had been was bathed in blood, the same brackish blood Naruto had noticed in Jirabu. And in the center, half buried in the bone he was exiting, were what remained of Kimimaro, resembling not so much a human as a lump of shredded meat. Doing his best to ignore the carnage he had caused, Naruto turned away from the sight to look at Chaoji, who flinched, not meeting his eyes. Naruto, ignoring the reaction, tonelessly spoke. "Well, now we don't have a barrel to protect, you better go help the others." Looking to the north, where the Uchiha had vanished to, he growled. "Sasuke is mine." Gulping, Chaoji spoke as he turned away, preparing to go after the renegade Uchiha. Naruto, are you sure you can fight? He gestured to Naruto's battered form and his tattered clothes. Naruto simply gave him a bloodthirsty grin before turning back and disappearing into the forest, followed by a silent clone carrying the form of Mito. His voice floated back to a petrified Chaoji. "More than enough to kill the fool." Chaoji stared at the forest into which Naruto had disappeared before shrugging and following him. He might as well regroup with Shikamaru. He would know what to make of this, anyway. As Naruto silently tree-hopped, following the trail of Sasuke, he was deep in thought. The last technique he had used in the clearing had been one he had invented during practice last night, and Mito had immediately vetoed his use of the technique until he was more proficient at the manipulation of the chains. She had thought that Naruto had not been ready to see the destruction caused by, in her words, a crude and inelegant technique. Naruto had vehemently disagreed before he had been reluctantly cowed into not using it by Mito. At that time, he had considered Mito to be stifling him, to be coddling him from a reality he considered himself exposed to from his youth. Now though, after he had seen the results of his more destructive jutsu, he was beginning to reconsider his opinion. Naruto had had a rough childhood. Growing up on the civilian sectors of Konoha so soon after the Kyuubi disaster, had not been easy for a child publicly known to be the Kyuubi Jinchuariki. However, now that he thought about it, it had also allowed him a certain disassociation with the realities of life in Shinobi Village. Naruto had never killed before this mission, which had proved a surprise to Jiraiya when he had inquired on Naruto's first kill, back when he had been training for the Chunin exam. He had been offended at the time, thinking that Jiraiya had been implying that he was a monster before Jiraiya had sat down to explain. Naruto's techniques, simply put, were not aimed towards capture. Even the basic Kuchiyus jutsu that Naruto could employ was geared towards straight combat. Naruto supposed that it was even more so with his Uzumaki chakra expression. After all, there wasn't many ways to not kill when using giant chains with foot-long blades poking out from every link. However, whether from Kakashi's design or his own unpredictable luck, he had, until now, managed to avoid killing anyone. He scoffed derisively. Well, that had lasted long enough. Now, 7 months into his shinobi career, Naruto had taken his first life, and just now he had taken his second. And he now understood what Mito had meant when she had said that using that technique would haunt him. Naruto was not sure he would be able to stop hearing that final scream of Kimi Mero. Jiraiya, when discussing kills with him, had told him a lucky shinobi gets a clean kill. Naruto supposed he could understand that. Naruto's first kill had been Jirabu, but at the time he had been to drowning in the Kyuubi's chakra, and he had barely noticed the actual kill. On the contrary, Kimi Mero had been killed in a conscious decision, one that had little to do with him and more to do with time. On top of that, the death had been prolonged and extremely messy, and as Naruto was directly connected to his chains, he had felt as each blade had entered Kimi Mero's body again and again as the blades cut into him. It was, after all, the reason he had named the technique atomic separator. When he had tried the technique on the training logs, each log had been roughly gouged into sawdust by the fast-spinning blades. However, that had not prepared him for what Kimi Mero's corpse had looked like after being exposed to the technique, a fine mushy blob of pinkish flesh, draining blood onto the surroundings. Naruto shuddered, trying to distract himself from the images. He did not need to be freaking out when he was going to face Sasuke in what was sure to turn out to be a death match. Whatever his other faults, Sasuke was a skilled shinobi, and his Sharingan was hard to counter. Suddenly, a giant humanoid construct lumbered into sight, blindly swinging a giant club before it suddenly disappeared in a cloud of chakra. A summon? Here? Well, if thought rationally, that had to mean that there was some sort of sound shinobi nearby, probably engaging one of his teammates. He was less sure of who the controller of the summon was, though he supposed it couldn't be the six-armed one, so it was probably the Kunoichi or the two-headed shinobi. Naruto smirked. He would bet on Shikamaru fighting the Kunoichi. The pineapple-haired Chunin was just unlucky that way. Anyway, he couldn't help them personally. He had to stop the idiot before he crossed the border or risk open war with the sound. Not that Konoha couldn't take them on, but according to Ghost Lady, Ba-chan didn't want open war just yet. And shadow clones were out of the question. Not only would they be useless without him to direct them in battle, seeing as they still had the tendency to fight each other, but his chakra was getting low as it was. He hoped it would recover before the fight, or he might have to rely on the Kyuubi's chakra, and it was not fun. Well, seeing as the opponent was a summon user, albeit of non-living creatures, he supposed he could help. Running through a series of hand seals and nicking his thumb, he slapped a branch as he hopped past it. Kuchiyus no Jutsu. Hello, Naru-chan. A simpering voice called out from the smoke. Naruto resisted the urge to face fault as he looked back at the toad. The toad, comfortably keeping up with him as he ran, waved a webbed foot at him in an overly feminine way. Staving off a headache through will alone, Naruto addressed the toad. Hello, Gamariki-san. And why did Naru-chan call little me today, Ribbit? Gamariki batted his eyelashes at a repulsed Naruto. Naruto sighed. This toad was the best at getting under his skin, even more than the toad boss or Gamatatsu. I was hoping for Gamaboo, Naruto deadpanned. But you'll do, I guess. Well, I never. Gamariki simpered, pouting at Naruto through painted lips. Naruto repressed a shudder. Doesn't Naru-chan like me? No, Naruto said flatly, but I want you to go help a teammate of mine. He's fighting an opponent about 300 meters away, in that direction. Just help any Konoha shinobi there, I've given you a little extra chakra. Gamariki didn't seem to be listening, instead glaring at Naruto through heavily lidded lashes. Naru-chan, that was rude. Naruto's patience was waning. Damn it, Gamariki. Just go there and help, it's a life and death situation. The large toad's expression changed abruptly. You should have led with that, brat. It rebuked, with a deep voice that was totally at odds with his usual simper. Ooh, I smell spiders. See you later, Naru-chan. It added flirtingly in its normal tone as it hopped away, heading in a different direction to where Naruto had pointed. Boy, that's the wrong direction. See you later, Naru-chan. Gamariki waved nonchalantly, totally ignoring Naruto as he hopped away and out sight. Naruto stared at the toad disbelievingly before shaking his head and continuing to trace Sasuke's scent. After all, Konoha had its Mito Gase and its Rock Lees and its Jiraiya's. Who was he to complain about a strange toad? Kuchiyus. Kyotogumo. Amagumo. Kaiten. Neji continued to spin as the chakra shell of the Kaiten spun around, scattering the falling spiders. Leaping away from the overhanging web, a transformed Kidomaru turned to face Neji. Face it, Hyuga. You'll have to come out of your cage sometime, and then it's going to be game over for you. Neji struggled to continue the spin of the technique. It was getting harder with his body being weighed down by the webbing issuing from the baby spiders. Yelling inarticulately, Neji stopped spinning before settling into a stance. 8 trigrams. 128 palms. With pointed beams of blue chakra issuing from his hands, Neji's hands sped up as he systematically bisected each and every spider around him while avoiding the arrows shot at him by Kidomaru from the other side. But he was getting tired, he wouldn't last much longer if this onslaught continued. However, moving now was impossible since if he tried to move he would have to let his guard down, which would let either the spider or the arrows hit him. Neither was advisable, he needed all his mobility for this fight. Cursing under his breath as he smoothly transitioned from the 128 palms back to Kaiten, Neji tried to think of a way to escape the trap when all of a sudden a Bariban toad was in the middle of the clearing. Yummy! With an exclamation, Kidomaru's Kyotogumo was pulled into a pair of painted lips where it hung limp. Kidomaru yelled in anger, firing an arrow into its eyes, but the toad simply batted it away before giving Neji a disturbingly coy look after it had swallowed the giant spider. Hello there, Hyuga-chan, I'm Gamariki. Naru-chan sent me to help you. The toad proceeded to bat his eyelashes at him, pouting at him in what was obviously meant to be a sexy pose. Skin crawling, Neji looked away, a long suffering sigh escaping his mouth. The drag queen toad was Naruto's idea of help? That guy had problems. Though he supposed it had helped him out, since now that the spider summon was out of the way, the fight was much more even. It still did not make it less disturbing. Hyuga-chan, climb onto me. Gamariki simpered, making Neji fight the urge to retch, face coloring. Hearing the snort escaping from the Kidomaru only managed to anger him further, but he nevertheless complied. The name is Neji. Hyuga Neji. He grumbled as he climbed atop the toad, sitting astride its neck. Gotcha, Neji-chan. Kidomaru chose this moment to intervene, getting fed up of his arrows getting caught by a prehensile tongue. Heh. Having a friend send you a summon to help you, that's a new low, even for you, Konoha trash. Yeah, because you don't use summons ever, Neji snarked. He was getting irritable, not used to being outlasted. He knew that he was almost out of chakra, and though the chakra flow in his opponent was chaotic and strangely corrupted, he still had more than enough chakra for a few more techniques. Gamariki sniffed. Yeah, you're rude, Spider-chan. I know what to do, I'll kiss you and make it better. As both shinobi looked on horrified, the toad leapt through the webbing Kidomaru had hastily erected, reaching down to bind Kidomaru with his tongue. Whip of love. As Kidomaru struggled vainly in his bindings, Gamariki hauled him in before pressing a sloppy kiss to the face of a struggling Kidomaru. Genjutsu kiss. Kidomaru, still in his second stage transformation, froze for a moment before a look of utter terror crossed his face and he keeled over. Neji looked on with wide eyes. Finally getting over his shock, Neji vaulted over Gamariki's head, leaning down near Kidomaru, who was now whimpering. Well, this was not how I expected this to end, Neji said lightly, before picking up one of the golden kunai lying scattered on the ground. So long, Kidomaru-san. The kunai came down in an arc across Kidomaru's exposed throat, and blood sprayed across the clearing. Neji stared at the bleeding corpse blankly before he turned his back and walked towards Gamariki. Looking at Gamariki, who was staring at him in surprise, Neji shrugged. What? We're in no position to take prisoners. Slowly, Gamariki's expression turned to subtle approval before he spoke in a gruff voice, patting Neji on the back with one webbed foot. Good for you, kid. Most people don't get that mature until it's too late. Well, we can't all be children, can we? Gamariki chuckled. That we can't? Hop on, kid. One of your friends seemed to be in a spot of trouble. Neji clambered up the toad's neck, settling just above its lurid bow as the toad hopped out of the clearing. On the floor, the corpse of Kidomaru, still in its transformed state, bled onto the forest floor. What the hell happened here? The Hokage entourage had been heading for the nearest chakra source, only to come across a wasteland. Sanada, who had dropped to a crouch, was looking at the pierced corpse clinically. Shizune, behind her, was hovering behind her in obvious worry. Two masked Anbu members stood off to his side, scanning for any potential threats, while Kakashi leaned against a nearby tree, watching the proceedings lazily. Asuma, who had been the one to ask the question, was staring at the destruction with his cigarette hanging limply, threatening to set fire to his beard. Kakashi was the one to answer him. Looking at the scuff marks and the footprints, there were two separate battles here, though it seems as if the first was much more destructive than the second. Asuma gestured at the corpse. So I guess he died in the second fight? Sanada spoke, checking over the corpse. Large piercing wounds through the mouth, heart and stomach were done simultaneously. They were the cause of death. In addition, the corpse has a multitude of small lacerations, all seem to be made from a large sharp blade-like object, and a large gash in the abdomen area, also consistent with a large blade. Also, one of the hands seems strangely deformed. There are signs of a cursed seal on the corpse. Kakashi took up the explanation. 3 groups have left the clearing, all heading in roughly the same direction. The first consisted of 3 people, one carrying a heavy object, judging by the depth of the impression, with an additional trail following immediately afterwards. The second group consisted of 5 shinobi, in a lisped linear formation. The last consisted of a single wounded shinobi, and the tracks head slightly more to the west than the others, leaving this clearing approximately 20 minutes ago. Judging by the whirlpool indent in the shoe prints and the scrap of bloodied orange fabric in that tree over there, here Kakashi pointed at tree in question, which had a scrap of orange fabric dyed red in places with blood tied to one of the lower boughs. The lone shinobi is Naruto. Shizune looked at Kakashi, shocked. Surely you don't mean. Sanada stood up, finished with the field autopsy. This is Naruto's kill. There are traces of Kyuubi chakra in the smaller wounds and in the death blows, and in substantial quantities in the gash across the right side of the abdomen. Looking around the clearing, which was full of displaced boulders, large craters, and splatters of blood, Sanada continued grimly. And it looks like he didn't get away unscathed from the exchange, especially with the Kyuubi chakra blanketing the area. The Anbu to the right decided to join in the conversation. Hokage-sama, which trail should we follow? Sanada sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose as she looked at the trails. Finally she answered. We will follow Naruto's tracks. Either he is lying a short distance away, which could mean he needs immediate attention, or he will have joined up with the others at some point. The Anbu tried to protest. But, Sanada-sama, the immediate retrieval is more important. Silence, Sanada thundered, turning to glare at the Anbu in question. The well-being of Konoha's Jinchuriki takes precedence over that of the traitorous Uchiha. Kakashi-san, how long to catch up with him? That he had his normal speed, and he is delayed by further fights, I would say in about 15 minutes at Jonin speeds. But factoring in possible wounds and any Kyuubi enhancements, I'll say about 25, just to be safe. Sanada straightened up, even as Asuma whistled in surprise. Then we'll have to move quickly, the sound border is only 20 minutes away. Let's go, I don't think I can bear the feel of the Kyuubi chakra much longer. In a blur, all the Jonin exited the clearing, heading for the hostile border of sound. Sasuke. Naruto yelled as he finally came into sight of the fleeing Uchiha, the yell coming out as a growl as he chased him. Ignoring him for the time being, Sasuke sprinted out of the forest, which abruptly gave way to the deep stone cliffs that formed the Valley of the End, a landmark of Konoha that had stood from the start of the Nidame's reign. It also served as the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Rice Paddies. Vaulting over the head of Hashirama's statue that adorned Konoha's border at the waterfall, Sasuke landed on his ancestor's head before finally turning to face Naruto. So you finally caught up, Dobe. Looks like we have some unfinished business, don't we? Naruto slowly jogged up the Hashirama statue before jumping down to Hashirama's outstretched hand, where he doubled over, panting. You've got to be kidding me, Temme. He wheezed, looking incredulously at Sasuke. You came to the Valley of the End to have a standoff against me? While I'm flattered you think I'm as good as the first Hokage, I don't think your ancestor would be pleased, do you? Sasuke scowled before leaping down on top of Madara's hand, glaring at Naruto through a pair of spinning Sharingan. Talking isn't going to help you now, Dobe, Sasuke gloated, an insane glint in his eye. I'm going to kill you now, then I will gain the power to kill my brother. Naruto stared at him before straightening up, staring at Sasuke's eyes. He could feel Sasuke bristle all the way across the valley. Staring into their eyes during battle was the worst insult you could do to an Uchiha, as it said you disregarded their eye prowess. Looking at Sasuke through blood-caked crimson locks, Naruto spoke. "This is the last chance to turn back, Uchiha. Surrender and come quietly. You never learn, do you, dope?" Sasuke scoffed, "Such presumption, to think you could ever beat an Uchiha. But I won't stop you from trying, your attempts only benefit me." "Well then, we've reached an impasse, haven't we?" Naruto inquired as his hand slipped into his kunai pouch, one of the few things to have survived the earlier battles. Pushing his blood-soaked hair from his eyes with his other, he looked at Sasuke with an unreadable expression. "As a last favor for my ex-teammate, I'll give you one last piece of advice, Tema, in the unlikely event you leave this alive." He held up one hand, stopping Sasuke from charging. "Don't let hate consume you, you'll just die poorer for it." Then, with a grunt of effort, 3 chains burst from his back, and with them waving behind him, he gestured to the suddenly enraged Sasuke. "Come, Uchiha Sasuke. Let's battle." Sasuke met Naruto in mid-air, kunai clashing as they tried to overpower each other. As Sasuke attempted to dislodge Naruto with a kick, Naruto pushed away, pivoting using his chains as he drove a fist to Sasuke's knee with an audible crack. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke retaliated, catching the retreating fist, using it to wrench Naruto in the opposite direction as they both landed roughly on the faces of the statues, clinging with chakra. Splinters flew from the statues at their landing as they stared at each other, crimson slits staring into crimson eyes with a pair of black tomo on each eye. Then they were back at each other, kunai clashing against kunai as they sought to overpower each other, engaging in a fearsome taijutsu bout while defending themselves from the other's kunai. Naruto, tethered by a pair of chakra chains to the statues, was staying relatively still, never offering the first blow, while using the chains to maneuver in mid-air. Mito had explained earlier that Uchiha taijutsu relied on counter-strikes, therefore making them make the first moves seriously hampered their choices. Meanwhile Sasuke was flitting around him, trying to puncture Naruto's defense with his superior speed. What? Naruto ducked under a deceptively fast kunai to the throat, the hell, using his chains to pull himself above a potentially crippling jab to the abdomen. Naruto somersaulted, driving a double kick towards the Uchiha's face, who curled around the attack before using one of Naruto's chains to leap above Naruto. "Are these infernal chains, dope?" Deflecting a stray kunai with a flick of his chain, Naruto pulled himself onto Hashirama's stone face as Sasuke landed opposite him. "Well, it's just a little trick I learned recently, Tema." Grinning sadistically, he took another kunai in a reverse grip, double-wielding them as his chains twirled around him. "Care to try again, Tema? It looks to me like you're losing your edge." As soon as he stopped talking, Naruto let go of his grip on the statue, free-falling as a blast of fire zoomed overhead from Sasuke's Gakakyu no Jutsu. As he fell parallel to the waterfall using his chains to slow himself, Sasuke followed, forming more hand seals as he fell. Kaiten. Housenkan no Jutsu. A multitude of fireballs sprayed from Sasuke's mouth, heading towards Naruto. Twisting in mid-air, Naruto dived into the pool at the foot of the statues in order to avoid the fireballs, while a trailing chain slammed into Sasuke's side, throwing him harshly onto the stone feet of the Madara statue. Staggering, Sasuke slowly stood, holding his ribs tenderly where the chain had gripped him, a dark spot forming on his shirt as blood leaked through. However, he was smirking. Naruto shot up from the bottom of the pool, leaping over the water and landing on it, facing Sasuke. Fresh blood leaked from a half-cauterized cut in his face received from shuriken hidden in the miniature fireballs before the wound steamed and sealed shut. Naruto smirked as he balanced on the water, having lost his kunai in the exchange. "You'll have to do better than that, Tema, if you want to kill me." Yelling in rage, Sasuke threw a volley of shuriken at Naruto, running at him in their wake. Then one of the chains had batted away the incoming shuriken, and there were half a dozen Naruto clones charging him. Ducking under simultaneous kicks from opposite sides to his head, he tried to sweep the legs off the nearest clones. Then a third clone was bringing his leg down in a heel drop, forcing Sasuke to twist away from the attack, retreating to relative safety. His hand dipping briefly into his supply pouch, Sasuke sprinted around the Naruto clones, occasionally throwing a shuriken at the group, but they were all deflected by the clones as they stood their ground. Then all the clones were pulled together by invisible wires attached to each shuriken, and with a devious smirk, Sasuke held the other end of the ninja wire to his lips. Kaiten. Ryuka no Jutsu. When the flame reached the captured clones, they dispelled in a burst of chakra smoke, just as Sasuke's ankles were grabbed from underwater, pulling him in. Using the sinking Sasuke as a support, Naruto leapt up, driving Sasuke further down in the process before he vaulted onto the feet of the Hashirama statue, waiting for Sasuke to resurface. Then Sasuke leapt out of the water onto the statue of Madara, glaring at Naruto as water dripped from his body in a cascade. His teeth clenched, Sasuke reached for the shoulder before black seal markings spread from beneath his fingers, racing across his body. His eyes were now fixed on Naruto, glittering with an inner madness that startled Naruto as Sasuke cupped one hand in the other in preparation of a technique. Sasuke had always been rather close to the edge psychologically, but it was proving to be a completely different thing to actually witness him going off the deep end, for Sasuke was indeed broken. There was no longer any glimmer of intelligence in the swirling Sharingan, just anger and the desperation of a caged beast. He had no option now, even if he desired it, Sasuke would either be killed or he would be killed by Sasuke. The pool lit up an iridescent blue as lightning-natured chakra began to flicker across the fingers of Sasuke's outstretched hand, and a maniac grin spread across his face. Chidori. In the next instant, Sasuke was speeding towards Naruto, a lightning-encrusted knife hand speeding towards his face as he dodged Naruto's flailing chains. Leaping over a swinging chain, Sasuke's Chidori cut through the last chain, just as Naruto tried to swerve around the incoming jab. With a screech of lightning discharge, the Chidori buried itself deep into Naruto's shoulder. Naruto let out a strangled yell as the electricity surged through his body before another chain burst through his navel, shooting into and through Sasuke's abdomen as it threw him off his feet and into the statue. There was silence for a moment, which was broken in an instant as both fighters crumpled onto their respective statues, blood seeping from their wounds. Naruto's chains dissolved as he couldn't muster the necessary concentration to manifest them, and he screamed hoarsely as red viscous chakra coursed up his shoulder, which was bleeding profusely. On the other statue, Sasuke had collapsed, fingers grasping onto the puncture hole caused by Naruto's chain as he writhed in agony. With a guttural groan from Sasuke, his cursed seal flared again as the markings started to spread onto the unaltered skin, the already affected features bubbling in its wake. Sasuke was becoming bulkier, muscle mass increasing as his skin took on an unnatural grayish shade, and his hair extended and became blue-gray. With a spurt of blood, hand-like appendages burst from his shoulder blades to hover behind him, and the sclera taking on a dull gray color as his puncture wound healed. A blackish shuriken marking appeared on his face as Sasuke got up, his leathery appendages making small movements as he tested them. At the other side, red chakra was coalescing at the Chidori wound before it spread in a cloak over Naruto's body. His hair was rising in a non-existent breeze, crimson locks separating into 9 spiky protrusions which waved behind his head as his canines extended and his whisker marks gouged deeper into his face. The cloak bubbled, forming 3 tails and a pair of canine ears in the cloak as Naruto settled into a 4-legged crouch, Kyuubi chakra scorching the rock below him as a pair of black-veined crimson eyes observed the creature in front of them. A raspy chuckle escaped the throat of the Kyuubified Naruto as he looked at the transformed Sasuke. "Temme, I never took you for a drag queen." Then a somber look passed across his face. "Just look at yourself, Sasuke, willing to give up your independence, your humanity for a sliver of power that you won't even get to enjoy. Are you really that shallow to become a monster for a chance to fulfill a dream? Take it from someone on the other side, Temme. Very few survive being a monster with their humanity intact, and those that do never chose their fate." Sasuke did not respond, snarling at Naruto, the overlarge hand-like appendages flapping behind him. Dirty purple chakra rippled above his skin as he crouched, Sharingan flaring back into life, 6 Tomo swimming in the dark crimson pools. Naruto's Kyuubi tail constructs were suddenly pierced through with his chains, only they were now crimson in color, matching his chakra cloak and his eyes, with deep black veins running throughout their length. They also seemed to be aflame, a reddish transparent flame coating each chain link. Eyes flashing, Naruto gave Sasuke a taunting grin. "Come on then, Temme. Let's see what being the slave of Snake Face got the last Uchiha." With an enraged roar, Sasuke ran towards Naruto, the claws and the appendages protruding from his shoulder blades poised to attack and his hands running through hand seals. Inhaling, Sasuke breathed a torrent of fire at Naruto, who simply smirked as he ran headfirst into the conflagration. Suddenly, from within the fireball, a flaming chain arced out towards Sasuke, puncturing through the leather webbing in his wings, burning it as it tore through effortlessly, leaving Sasuke pinned. Following the chain, Naruto emerged from the fire, completely unharmed as he ran towards a trapped Sasuke, a glowing crimson ball of chakra in his hand, leaving swirling and turning air currents in its wake. Sasuke countered by creating another Chidori, colored black by the corrupted chakra. Rasengan. Chidori. The hunched figure slowly made its way down a darkened corridor, leaning on a walking stick, towards a set of oak doors. Two people walked behind the figure, both talking in heated tones. Danzo, this step is unprecedented. We won't simply be able to undo what you're going to do. Danzo chuckled grimly, looking back at the Hokage's advisors. I realize that, Kaharu, he said quietly, his good eye squinting at the wizened figure of the female advisor and teammate of the third Hokage. However, we can't allow the mistakes of Saratobi to continue. For all her bluster, Sanada Hime is still too soft to take the necessary decisions. Hamura spoke, his gaze fixed on the root leader. Danzo, we've gone along with your plans because they have been for the good of Konoha. But what you're trying to do, it could destabilize everything. We're not in a position to enter a war, surely you realize that. Danzo simply smirked. On the contrary, Suna is not prepared for war. My route can easily disrupt what little resistance Suna can muster. Kaharu looked at Danzo, protesting. But attacking Suna in their home territory, that's suicide. I will not allow you to send any more of our forces to their deaths for no gain. We don't have enough forces for the stalemate this is going to become, Danzo, and mark my words, this is going to end up destroying both Suna and Konoha. Danzo stared back at Kaharu. Don't be so quick to decide, Kaharu. We simply need the upper hand in the surrender. Once we have them within our grasp, we can make sure they never try something like this again. Sanada Hime was going to make our treaty more favorable for Suna. He gritted his teeth. I will never allow that to happen, not while I live. I lost my arm in the wars to get us that deal. Hamura looked at Danzo, surprised. You mean you're doing this for personal revenge? This is going to weaken both our countries, Danzo. The lack of war between our two countries is the only thing that's stopping Inoki from an outright invasion. Surely you see that? What you're going to do, it could lead to another shinobi world war. Danzo grunted. Nevertheless, Suna can't get out of betraying us without any repercussions, like Sanada Hime would have us do. Kaharu grimaced. Then I'm sorry old friend, but I cannot support you in this attempt. I will not be party to creating world war. Good luck getting the approval without our support. Danzo gave a sinister chuckle as he passed through the oak doors, entering the council chambers. You'll be surprised, old friend. You'll be surprised. I bloody well hope I appreciate what I'm doing, Naruto grumbled as he dipped his finger into a small pot containing a thick crimson liquid, which he was using to draw patterns on a translucent body placed on a stone slab. And damn, that was confusing. Why can't the bloody original be the clone for once? The woman lying on the slab gave a pained snort. The Naruto clone gave it an annoyed look. Oh shut up, ghost lady. Your lucky boss had already had me created for some time when you decided to get yourself blown up. Mito gave it a withering glare, accompanied by a much less friendly snort. The Naruto clone stared back, looking decidedly unimpressed. Well you did. I wonder how you survived to be ancient, ghost lady, if you're so damn careless. A hint of a grin blossomed on the Naruto clone's face as Mito grunted in indignation at the old comment. Well, you are ancient, ghost lady. Anyway, be glad I am here for you to go all vampire on. Mito sniffed as the Naruto clone continued drawing the blood seal on her forehead, this time with a definite smirk playing around his lips. Whatever you say, ghost lady. You're still going to absorb all my chakra when I commit glorified suicide by activating a seal I drew that I barely understood enough to draw. I still can't figure out half the arrays. Mito gurgled before speaking in a raspy whisper. Naruto-kun, it isn't like I can get the chakra from the regular source, you know. I'm pretty sure my seal's been completely torched by the Kyuubi chakra by now. Suddenly the whining sound of disturbed wind and the crackle of lightning filled the air, obvious over the muted explosions before. The Naruto clone looked in the direction of the sound, startled. Damn, that's not good, he muttered to himself as he started to draw the symbols hurriedly. If I'm already using the Rasengan, and the Tenma is already using the Chidori, I don't have much time. Looking at Mito, who looked ready to comment, he hurriedly added, and you, don't talk. Really, one would think having your throat sliced by a splinter would discourage chatter. Mito glared back mutinously, which the Naruto clone ignored, instead concentrating on painting the final sealing array. Wiping away the sweat on his brow, he sighed. I swear, I always pawn this sort of job on me. Well, I suppose it's time. Running through a series of hand seals, he slammed one hand on Mito's forehead and the other on his own chest, which had a corresponding blood seal inscribed. Sealing art. Chakra vampire seal. The blood lit up a bright white, then Mito's wounds began to seal shut as the Naruto clone seemed to lose color, mass flowing down his outstretched hand into Mito. The Naruto clone gave Mito a cheeky grin, opening his mouth to make a final comment when the earth trembled, accompanied by a giant explosion. Startled, Mito half sat up in alarm. What was that? The Naruto clone, looking distinctively less solid, wordlessly stared back at her, then doubled over, clutching at his stomach. The world went dark as a pillar of darkness shot up from the Valley of the End, and the Naruto clone yelled out in pain, a glowing light shining from under the remains of his jacket. Hurrying towards the screaming clone, Mito unceremoniously pulled away his jacket and shirt, bearing the seal, which was glowing a sinister orange. Before her startled gaze, the seal pulsed, before the kanji for death superimposed itself on top of the swirl of the original seal in an eerily shining black. End of chapter 8.